Senate will come out of recess. I call the Senate to order. I recognize Senator Bradley for a motion.
Good morning, Mr. President. I move that the Senate adjourn from the late session.
All in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it. The motion to adjourn passes. We are now in the early session. The Senate will be attentive to our chaplain, the Reverend Mark Warren.
Good morning, Senators. Let's pray. God, our hearts today turn to a part of the world that is facing trouble and turmoil. We think of Ukraine. We think of the families that are displaced. We think of the children that are leaving pets behind, leaving what they know, and it's got to be a very difficult time. So I ask, Lord, today, in this Senate in New Hampshire, that we would offer our prayer, our mindfulness to those people. Then our hearts and minds turn to our senators' families who have willingly given their spouses, their loved ones to serve a state, a great state, but in many ways have sacrificed time, vacations, for our senators to do important work for our state to serve our people. I just ask that their sacrifices would be met with equal rewards and blessings, Lord, for them. We thank you for the staff that serve our senators so well. Today, God, we just ask that you would just give clarity of mind, compassions of heart, and a willfulness to continue to do what's right. We ask this in your name. Amen.
Senator Guida, will you lead us in the pledge? To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Introduction of guests. We got to get back to that habit. Senator Avard is excused for the day. Without objection, today's FN report is adopted. Removed from the consent calendar, Senate Bill 340 in Commerce, Senate Bill 247 in Election Law. Without objection, the following bills are special ordered to the next session. Commerce, Senate Bill 340. Education, Senate Bill 426. Election Law, CACR 36. Finance, Senate Bill 408. Judiciary, Senate Bill 344. Senator Bradley moves that the consent calendar with the relevant amendments as printed in the day's calendar be adopted, and that all such bills found ought to pass be ordered as follows. FN bills not waived under Senate Rule 4-5 to the Committee on Finance. Non-FN bills approved for referral to Finance by the day's FN report to the Committee on Finance, and all other bills to third reading. All in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it. The consent calendar is adopted. Senate will be attentive to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Committee on Commerce, to which was referred Senate Bill 203, an act relative to the state minimum hourly wage rate. Having considered the same, the committee recommends that the bill be re-referred to interim study by a vote of 3-2. Senator French for the committee.
Senator French.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 203 be referred to interim study. This bill would have incrementally raised the minimum wage to $15 an hour by 2024. Currently, businesses have already raised their wage rates to $15 an hour or higher to attract employees. As a result of mandated wage rates, the committee heard that employees could be impacted by potential upward wage compression and fewer work hours, while businesses could potentially hire fewer employees and transition to more automated processes. The majority of the Commerce Committee asks for your support on the motion of re-referring to interim study on Senate Bill 203. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator French. The motion is refer to interim study. Is there any discussion? Senator Soucy.
like Groundhog Day all over again. I have been debating this issue for a number of years, and I won't stop until we finally make a change. What this bill seeks to do is make a modest and incremental increase in the minimum wage. Our wage, which is amongst the lowest in the country, has not been increased since 2009. The bill would incrementally increase the wage to $10 by June of 2023, and then by June of 2024 to 12, and then on to 15. At the beginning of this year, 21 states, 21 across the country, including all but one of our neighboring states, increased their minimum wage. New Hampshire is now the only New England state to default to the federal minimum wage, which hasn't increased in over a decade. New Hampshire's minimum wage ranges from $5 to $7 less, 5 to 7 less per hour than each of our New England states. In fact, we are just one of 15 states with the lowest minimum wage, equaling the federal level of $7.25. We're joined by the likes of Georgia and Kentucky, North Dakota, Oklahoma, Utah, Wyoming, and a number of other states. But all of the New England states, all except Connecticut, which was already paying at least $13 an hour, have increased their minimum wage to adequately adjust for the rise in cost of living over the past decade. The COVID-19 pandemic has forced us all to reevaluate the way we work and live. It also highlighted some glaring problems, but luckily we can take steps to address some of these. The pandemic exposed to all of us what workers in low-wage industries already knew all too well. Low pay and financial insecurity are some of the greatest issues facing hard-working Granite Staters, and the ripple effects are far-reaching, affecting our workforce, hurting our economy, and most critically hurting the people that we represent. As the old saying goes, do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. It's time for us as elected officials to do better for our constituents. As we work to rebuild our economy, it's impossible to ignore the biggest problem New Hampshire employers and businesses are facing, and that's the inability to competitively attract workers. As an aging state grappling with a workforce shortage and affordable housing crisis, we need to do everything we can to make New Hampshire as attractive as possible as we recruit and retain a highly skilled, robust workforce. But there's another piece, and that is the long-term savings we stand to deliver to taxpayers by increasing the minimum wage. By failing to pay a living wage in New Hampshire, we're effectively ensuring that Granite Staters access and in some cases remain on government assistance in order to get by. Despite what other perceptions may be, the truth is that most recipients of government assistance either work already or have a family who works. In fact, 66.6% of recipients across the country either work or are in a family where at least one of the adults works. Right now, a person working 40 hours a week at minimum wage, working all year with no time off, 52 weeks, is making about $15,000, well below the federal poverty level, even for a household of just two, never mind providing for a family. We all know that's simply not enough for people to live on, and it keeps these workers and their families hovering at or below the poverty level. Raising the minimum wage most directly impacts low-wage workers and would directly reduce government spending on public assistance. This is not the only thing to do, but it is a fiscally responsible thing to do, and it represents a cost savings to taxpayers. I find it particularly disheartening that in the past years, we've eliminated or are phasing out the interest and dividends tax, 49% of which is paid by the top 2.4% of the wealthiest Granite Staters, and yet we still have not increased the minimum wage. I don't know why we can't justify providing financial relief, how we can justify providing financial relief to the wealthiest among us, but we can't pass a modest increase in the minimum wage that stands to financially stabilize those living at the poverty level. As I said, it does feel like Groundhog Day all over again. I've been fighting this fight for New Hampshire workforce for over a decade. But somehow it feels different in this environment. You know, I've historically heard reasons why this won't work and how the sky is going to fall if we raise the minimum wage. And yet today, each and every one of us passes by businesses that have signs that say $15 an hour. And a few weeks later, we pass by the same business and the same sign is there, because even at those higher levels, they're having a hard time attracting workers. We are living in a different world than we were even just a year ago. And it's well past time that we acknowledge the needs of our constituents and do what's right for them. Thank you, Mr. President, and I would answer any questions. Appreciate the opportunity to once again advocate for the low-wage earners of our state.
Thank you, Senator Susie. Senator Gannon with a question.
Manchester.
Senator Susie.
Thank you, Senator Susie. In committee, we talked about, I was asking you, I thought it was mostly a nice training wage for my 14, 15-year-olds to get started. They all seem to go right up the pay scale after that. And I asked you a question of 2.5 years ago, the BIA informed me that it was around 5,000 people making minimum wage. Is that number correct? Or you were going to look into that?
Yep. Thank you, Senator Gannon, for that question. Two things I would say. First, when you talked about a training wage, one thing that's very clear, businesses, both large and small, want a bright line. They don't want a training wage or various wages. What they want is to know what their payroll costs are for each hour. And I believe a speaker following me will give you some exact numbers on how many people currently earn minimum wage and how many people earn below $15 an hour.
Thank you, Senator.
Speaker after Senator Susie. Senator Kavanaugh.
President, when you said the good senator from Manchester, I thought he wanted to talk to me. I rise to speak in opposition of the interim study recommendation of Senate Bill 203. We've spoken for many years now about raising the minimum wage, and God loves Senator Susie for keeping up this fight. I understand that when we talk about minimum wage, that many people think we're just talking about high school students or college kids. While that's sometimes the case, it's not always the case. We've heard from people who are trying to support themselves, and oftentimes even their families, working minimum wage paying jobs. According to the New Hampshire Economic Labor Market Bureau, as of earlier this month, Senator, roughly 11,000 New Hampshire residents, about 1% of the workforce, make minimum wage or less. And that said, approximately 144,000 employees, 21% of the workforce, makes less than $15. As Senator Susie said, this is simply not enough to live on, and as a result, we see workers leaving New Hampshire to work in our neighboring states, all of which pay a minimum wage that's at least $5 more than ours. We've often heard that the best social program is a good job. It's well past time we start paying people a livable wage that honors the work they do and adds value to our workforce. I would encourage my colleagues to vote against the interim study recommendation so an alternative motion can be made. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Kavanaugh. Any further discussion? Senator Gannon with a question for the fine senator from Manchester.
Any of the tipped wages. Thank you.
Senator Bradley.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. One thing I do agree with Senator Susie on, we have had this debate numerous times, and here we are again. And I'll say the same thing this morning that I've said many times. Increasing the minimum wage is well intended, but the actual real-world consequences are that it creates winners, obviously those people who have their wages increased, but also creates losers, those people who don't get, in particular, that first-time job that is absolutely essential for their development into the workforce. What we have seen over the last 10 years or so, as states have actually increased the minimum wage, is that as it becomes more and more expensive, technology starts to replace actual human beings, whether it's tablets at restaurants, whether it is computer checkouts at our supermarkets. It is a whole range of issues that technology is replacing that entry-level job that, in particular, first-time job seekers who need that first job, they are the actual losers here. So, as I've said many times before, it's well-intended. At this point in time where the actual wage, starting wage for a whole range of jobs is far higher than the minimum wage, I would urge the committee to vote yes, or the body to vote yes on the motion of interim study. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Bradley. Any further discussion? Senator Waters, with a question?
Yes, the question for Senator Susi.
Senator Susi.
Thanks for taking my question. Senator Susi, we've heard a couple things about the consequences of raising the minimum wage. And isn't it the case that the states around us, particularly Massachusetts, who have raised the minimum wage, have actually seen a faster job growth in New Hampshire since they've done that?
Thank you for the question, Senator. Absolutely, they have seen a faster job growth. They've seen the introduction of some technology, but more importantly, they've seen more of the service sector jobs increasing than we have.
And to follow up,
Follow-up.
isn't it also the case, I mean, surely the technology, we all see it, is transforming the workforce, and it means that better paying jobs are become more and more important. But isn't it the case that despite whatever tablets we're seeing at checkout lines or in restaurants, that New Hampshire is facing a rather dramatic labor shortage?
Yes, Senator, our labor shortage is quite significant. As I said earlier, there are places around the state that you drive by week after week that continue to have help wanted signs. Even at higher wages, they're unable to find employees.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Senator, did you have a question? Senator Rosenwald.
Yes, of Senator Susi. I wonder if you would agree with me that one sign of New Hampshire's inability to fill jobs is the fact that our business enterprise tax revenues are off almost 20% versus plan.
Yes, Senator, I would agree, knowing that you know more about the tax revenues serving on the Ways and Means Committee. I would strongly agree with that.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Senator Prentice with a question? Or you'd like to speak?
I'd like to speak.
Senator Prentice.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wasn't going to speak, but I want to offer a different side to this conversation. This past summer, I had an opportunity to be at on a homeless shelter in my district and was speaking with a woman who was there due to some unfortunate circumstances. She also has children that are with her. And when we discussed her pathway out to her own home with her children, she said, you know, part of her problem is that she doesn't have the educational opportunities that she needs, and that she is basically working at least one and then seeking out a second minimum wage job just to put some type of home or roof over her children's head outside of that shelter. And this cycle for her and others like her in New Hampshire will continue without us, outside of the pandemic, providing a livable minimum, raising the minimum wage to a place where this woman and her family, not on just one, hopefully on just one, but two jobs, can move themselves out of those circumstances. How many women, how many families in this state live in that circumstance? I had that opportunity to hear and to visit firsthand, and that's why I'm in favor of raising the minimum wage. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Any further discussion? Senator Susi requested a roll call. Senator Rosenwald seconds. The question is the adoption of the committee recommendation of refer to interim study on Senate Bill 203. The clerk will call the roll.
Senator Hennessy.
Yes.
Senator Gaida.
Yes.
Senator Bradley.
Yes.
Senator Waters?
No.
Senator Prentice?
No.
Senator Gray?
Yes.
Senator French?
Yes.
Senator Ward?
Yes.
Senator Rishardi?
Yes.
Senator Khan?
No.
Senator Daniels?
Yes.
Senator Avard is excused. Senator Rosenwald?
No.
Senator Carson?
Yes.
Senator Whitley?
No.
Senator Kavanaugh?
No.
Senator Reagan?
Yes.
Senator Susie?
No.
Senator Birdsell?
Yes.
Senator D'Alessandro?
No.
Senator Perkins Quokka?
No.
Senator Gannon?
Yes.
Senator Sherman?
No.
Senator Morse?
Yes. The ayes have it, 13 to 10. The motion of referred interim study is adopted. Senate will be attentive to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Committee on Commerce, to which was referred Senate Bill 214, an act relative to conflicts of interest and contract powers of condominium units owners associations. Having considered the same, the committee recommends that the bill is inexpedient to legislate by a vote of 3 to 2. Senator French for the committee.
Senator French.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 214 inexpedient to legislate. This bill would have required a condominium unit owner who contracts for the provision of goods or services with the condominium to recuse themselves from participation or vote during an awarding of a contract. In addition, this relationship would have to be disclosed by the Unit Owners Association. The majority of the committee felt this bill would have allowed a minority of unit owners to override a majority unit owner who has a vested interest in a property. Board members of an association already have a fiduciary duty to disclose all conflicts. Also, the committee felt that it did not make sense for a majority owner who owns a property management company to do excessive work or neglect a property because it would have a negative impact on the equity of all units. The majority of the Commerce Committee asks for your support on the motion of inexpedient to legislate on Senate Bill 214. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator French. The motion is inexpedient to legislate. Is there any discussion? The question is the adoption of the committee recommendation of inexpedient to legislate on Senate Bill 214. You ready for the question? All in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it. The motion of inexpedient to legislate is adopted. The Senate will be attentive to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Committee on Education, to which was referred Senate Bill 410, an act relative to school district transparency. Having considered the same, the committee recommends that the bill is ought to pass with an amendment by a vote of 5 to 0. Senator Ward for the committee.
Senator Ward.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 410 ought to pass with amendment. This bill requires public comment periods at school board meetings and meetings of the State Board of Education. This bill seeks to increase community involvement, increase consistency in the provision of public comment periods before school boards, and assure parents that their right to advocate for their children before their local school board elected officials is protected. The committee adopted a replace all amendment to address the need for a structured and readily accessible public comment period before school board meetings while providing some flexibility to school boards to prudently schedule such periods on their agendas as they see fit. The committee amendment also seeks to ensure that the State Board of Education shall provide the same structured public comment opportunities as our local school boards. The Education Committee asks for your support on the motion of ought to pass with amendment on Senate Bill 410. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Ward. The bill is now on second reading. The first order of business is the committee amendment. Is there any discussion on the committee amendment? The question is on the adoption of the committee amendment. You ready for the question? All in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it. The committee amendment is adopted. The bill is on second reading. Is there any further discussion or amendments? The question is on the adoption of ought to pass as amended on Senate Bill 410. Are you ready for the question? All in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it. The motion of ought to pass as amended is adopted, and it's ordered to third reading. Senate will be attentive to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Committee on Education, to which was referred Senate Bill 421, an act relative to dual and concurrent enrollment for career and technical education center students. Having considered the same, the committee recommends that the bill is ought to pass by a vote of 4 to 1. Senator Khan for the committee.
Senator Khan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 421 ought to pass. This bill clarifies the time of payment and the participation by non-public schools in the dual and concurrent enrollment program of the Community College System of New Hampshire. This program serves approximately 8,000 students annually and works to provide these courses at low cost or no cost to high school students. The funding of this program was formerly overseen by the New Hampshire Department of Education. However, as of last year, the community college system was asked to oversee these funds and distribute them based on a course completion basis. This bill differentiates what triggers the release of funding from successful completion to an enrollment basis. Applying the enrollment-based standard versus the successful completion standard is more in line with the community college enrollment practices. The Education Committee asks for your support on the motion of ought to pass on Senate Bill 421. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Khan. The bill is now on second reading. Is there any discussion? Senator Waters.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I thank the committee for its work on this bill. There was concern raised by Diana Fenton on behalf of the Department of Education and the Commissioner about that issue, about whether the payment should go out at a time of enrollment or upon successful completion. I had good conversation yesterday with Diana Fenton, and we think that there will be a way to bring the parties together and work out an amendment on that issue, because I understand what the Commissioner's point on that, and that we can work out an amendment that we will bring forward in the House. So I do hope we will support this, and stay tuned for the way we can fix that issue. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Waters. Any further discussion? The question is on the adoption of the committee recommendation of ought to pass on Senate Bill 421. You ready for the question? All in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it. The motion of ought to pass is adopted, and it's ordered to the Committee on Finance. Senate will be attentive to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Committee on Election Law and Municipal Affairs, to which was referred Senate Bill 244, an act relative to nonconforming structures and variances. Having considered the same, the committee recommends that the bill be re-referred to interim study by a vote of 4 to 1. Senator Gray for the committee.
Senator Gray.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 244 be referred to interim study. This bill would make allowances for certain nonconforming structures and would make changes to the definition of subdivision. A subdivision that is not served by municipal water and sewer needs to get a septic system approval from DES. The legislation would allow a property to be converted to a condominium form of ownership without complying with subdivision regulations. For this reason, the Election Law and Municipal Affairs Committee asks for your support on a motion of interim study. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Gray. The motion is referred to interim study. Is there any discussion? The question is the adoption of the committee recommendation of refer to interim study on Senate Bill 244. You ready for the question? All in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it. The motion to refer to interim study is adopted. Senate will be attentive to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Committee on Election Law and Municipal Affairs, to which was referred Senate Bill 246, an act relative to qualified private communities. Having considered the same, the committee recommends that the bill is ought to pass with an amendment by a vote of 3 to 2. Senator Birdsall for the committee.
Senator Birdsall.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 246 ought to pass with amendment. This bill, as amended, will define and regulate qualified private communities. Many condominium and homeowners associations in New Hampshire are located on what are considered private roads by their municipalities. This designation requires the unit owners to pay for all road maintenance, service, and repairs, which can total in the thousands.
They are also paying the same tax rate as the other residents on public roads that the municipality is maintaining. This arrangement benefits the municipality, therefore developers of these communities receive variances to build substandard private roads. This legislation tries to put a cushion between the future condo and homeowners and associations and inevitable road repairs. It requires developers of condominiums or homeowners associations to establish a capital reserve fund of no less than 50% of the cost to replace all roadways within the qualified community, or it requires all roadways to be built to the design standards for public ways for the municipality that is approving the project. The Election Law and Municipal Affairs Committee asks for your support on the motion of ought to pass with amendment. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Birdsell. The motion is ought to pass with amendment. The bill is on second reading. The first order of business is the committee amendment. Is there any discussion on the committee amendment? Senator Gannon with a question.
Of the good Senator Birdsell.
Senator Birdsell.
Just so I understand, because I have a lot of voters who are interested in the bill. If I understand it right, and in my town we have maybe 100 private roads, if there are 4 or more houses that come together, they could form an association. Is that correct, on their own? So people who are not in a condo development, they're just on a private road. If there are 4 or more, they can form an association, put some money together of the maintenance for the year, and then they could go to the town and ask for funding, just like the condo groups. Is that correct? Or did I misunderstand the bill?
I'm not sure what the number is, but we actually had testimony from someone who was on a private road that was maintained by.
It was 4, but thank you. Okay, I just wanted to make sure it included private roads. Thank you.
Yep.
You all set, Senator Gannon? Okay. The question is on the adoption of the committee amendment. Further discussion? Question is on the adoption of the committee amendment. You ready for the question? All in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it. The committee amendment is adopted. The bill is on second reading. Is there any further discussion or amendments? The question is on the adoption of ought to pass as amended on Senate Bill 246. You ready for the question? All in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it. The motion of ought to pass as amended is adopted, and it's ordered to third reading. Senate will be attentive to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Committee on Election Law and Municipal Affairs, to which was referred Senate Bill 250, an act enabling municipalities to adopt a tax credit for qualified private community property owners. Having considered the same, the committee recommends that the bill be re-referred to interim study by a vote of 4 to 1. Senator Ward for the committee.
Senator Ward.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 250 be referred to interim study. This bill would enable municipalities to adopt a tax credit for qualified private community property owners. The committee heard from organizations and unit owners regarding the burden of paying municipalities for services that they are not being provided. In addition to paying property taxes, private community property owners have to pay separately for road maintenance and repair, trash pickup, and other services that other residents within the town receive for free. While this is well-intentioned legislation, there are similar bills moving forward that will provide the assistance and financial relief to condominium unit owners that this seeks to provide. The Election Law and Municipal Affairs Committee asks for your support on the motion of interim study. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Ward. The motion is referred to interim study. Is there any discussion? Senator Waters.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I want to thank the committee so much for its good work on Senate Bill 246. We've had so many bills over the past few years, and we've heard from a lot from our constituents, and I know you've heard a lot from one of my constituents in particular about this issue. And I do think that we have recognized that we need to do something, and that's why 246 is a very good step there. And on 250, this bill really helped us to identify the issues that are at stake, and it really is a kind of an issue of fairness, I think. You know, when you hear that people are being assessed at the full value of their property and they're not receiving certain services. In Dover, one that bothered me particularly was that fire and rescue would not go into a private road because of the width of the road. And there's some public safety issues there, as well as the ideas about, you know, the plowing and the trash pickup, and on it goes. I think we also recognize that perhaps the source of this was the municipality's understandable desire to keep the cost of development of housing low by allowing builders to come in and to put in roadways and that would not meet the municipal standards, so they couldn't be adopted as a municipal road. And I mean that, you know, we're facing a housing shortage, and that is certainly an ongoing issue. As far as this bill, I really thought that, you know, there we are with the tax credit. And I, you know, here's the metaphor, that this is kind of like a can of worms being opened on a slippery slope, okay? So imagine, if you will. And I get that. It is a difficult issue for municipalities. Nonetheless, I do think that in the future, this problem is going to go away, and I think there would be a way to address the way in which the tax credit is determined. This was enabling legislation, after all, but it did put a little bit of a straitjacket on municipalities about how to determine the tax credit. But I do think that there'd be a way to pass a bill in the future, after we see how 246 works, that would, you know, enable a municipality to develop its own means of determining whether or what amount of tax credit should be delivered. So stay tuned. You're going to still be hearing from my constituent and others as time goes by, but I appreciate the progress that we have made. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Waters. Any further discussion? Senator Carson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to ask the body to overturn the interim study motion so that I might offer an ought to pass motion. During the summertime, Senator Birdsell and I met with groups of folks that have organized all across the state to address this inequity that exists in our communities today. Many of these people buy into these communities. They come here to retire. They want to spend time and really enjoy our state. And we know that these communities oftentimes are built in different stages. They're not usually built out all at once. And what's happening is these roads that they find themselves now responsible for is placing a great burden upon these homeowners. Roads, we don't really think about our roads and lasting and repair. I mean, we go on our town roads and there's potholes, and we know in the springtime those potholes are going to be repaired. So it's safe for us to travel on these roads. But within these planned communities, they don't have that same assurance, because they now are responsible for the upkeep of their roads. So what does that mean? Anything that goes wrong with this road, any pothole, any divot, any kind of structural failure of that road, plowing, sweeping, any of those things that we as taxpayers who do not live on a private road, we just don't even think twice about. We know that we pay our taxes to our communities. Our roads are kept up through our own tax dollars. The problem is these folks are not only paying for their roads, but they're now paying for everybody else's roads as well. And they're receiving no service whatsoever from the community. There have been suggestions, allow them to have gated communities where there's a gate and you can only get in through some sort of a pass card. That way they can control who is actually using their roads. But that goes back to the idea that these communities are often built in different stages. So you might move in on stage 1, stage 2 is being built behind you. Those construction trucks, which are huge and tend to do a considerable amount of damage to a road over a period of time, have to have a way to get in and out of that community. So the folks that move in are now stuck paying for all of that. Now, people say, well, you know, they don't pay as much for the property. I argue people living in these communities, these planned communities, they pay as much as somebody else. In fact, probably more, because they have their association fees that they have to pay for. And if you look at some of the testimony that was given, I mean, they have to pay for fire hydrant rentals. They have to pay, again, snow removal, $65,000, street lighting, $340. Again, the fire hydrant rental, for a total of almost $80,000 every year. Every year. We don't have to pay for that stuff. And people say, well, they should have known when they bought the community that they were going to have to pay for these things. Maybe, but who actually thinks about what does that really mean? Do they receive an itemized statement during the selling process letting them know this is the average cost and this is what you are going to have to pay? What this bill tries to do is balance the inequity that exists today, is to give them a tax break. They're paying for services they're not receiving, and they're not going to receive, because has anyone seen the process of a request for the town to take over a private road? It's not an easy process. Many of these communities, other members of the community use these roads as a cut-through to get to someplace else. So they're also paying for other people to use their roads. So I'm asking everyone to please consider overturning the IT interim study so we can try to help these folks and give them a tax break. I think they deserve it. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Carson. The question is on the adoption of the committee recommendation of refer to interim study on Senate Bill 250. You ready for the question? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it. The motion of refer to interim study is adopted. The Senate will be attentive to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Committee on Election Law and Municipal Affairs, to which was referred Senate Bill 252, an act relative to information on property tax bills. Having considered the same, the committee recommends that the bill is inexpedient to legislate by a vote of 3 to 2. Senator Ward for the committee.
Senator Ward.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 252, inexpedient to legislate. This bill would have required property tax bills to include information regarding the amount disbursed from the Education Trust Fund as a result of the Education Freedom Account program. The implementation of this bill would create confusing and unnecessary documentation for taxpayers. Education Freedom Accounts do not have any impact on property taxes. They stay with the local community. The creation of this new category on the tax bill will be irrelevant. Therefore, the majority of the Election Law and Municipal Affairs Committee asks for your support on the motion of inexpedient to legislate. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Ward. The motion is inexpedient to legislate. Is there any discussion? Senator Susi.
Mr. President, I rise in opposition to the committee recommendation of inexpedient to legislate on Senate Bill 252, which would require property tax bills to include just a bit of information regarding the amount disbursed from the Education Trust in the prior fiscal year and the amount the municipality's education grant aid will be reduced under RSA 18941 as a result of the school voucher program, which is in statute as well. The thought behind this legislation is very simple. It's simply about transparency. When we ask local property taxpayers to foot the bill for private or religious education for a small percentage of our students, these taxpayers deserve to know how much of their money is being diverted out of their public schools, and in turn, how much of a gap will need to be made up in future years, possibly through increased property taxes. You know, I've heard repeatedly over the past couple of weeks that the voucher program inserted into the last state budget is not any way funded by property taxes, that the money that's going to the recipients of school vouchers is from the State Education Trust Fund. and that this program is not affecting local taxes. Well, frankly, I disagree. Let's look at the current state of education funding here in New Hampshire. We're funding school vouchers out of the Education Trust Fund, which is for the benefit of public education and to allegedly fund an adequate education for every child. The Education Trust Fund is funded in large part by the BET, which is currently about 20% below plan. SWEPT is also a big part of how we fund education in the Education Trust Fund. So how would we fund education if the statewide property tax wasn't there? Or how do we fund education when $100 million of SWEPT has been cut? School vouchers affect local property taxes. Let me say it again. School vouchers affect local taxes. If there previously was state aid that's no longer going to the district, that will have an impact on local property taxes, as the district will have to work to make up for the lost state aid. The more demands we place on the Education Trust Fund, the fewer resources are available for other school needs, such as building improvements. I also want to counter this idea that a child leaving a public school system somehow saves the district money. A classroom doesn't become slightly smaller, the lights don't get a little dimmer, and the need to heat the building through a cold winter, which we seem to be having in New Hampshire, doesn't diminish when a student leaves. The fixed costs all remain the same, and they will remain the same, if not increase, as many of us have seen in our own home bills, our electricity, our heating, long after the phase-out money is gone. Our property tax bills already delineate the amount of public dollars being spent on public education. During the hearing, I brought in a copy of my own tax bill. Yes, it is stamped paid. There's plenty of room for one additional line. We currently delineate the municipal cost, the county cost, the city education portion, and the state education portion. Why not include one additional line? It only makes sense then that you would have the same level of clarity about the amount of public money being spent on private institutions. This bill is very simple. The public deserves transparency about public money and how that public money is being diverted to a different system of education. I urge my colleagues to vote down this recommendation of ITL so that I may offer a motion of OTP. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Susi. Senator Sherman.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. In 2013, as a freshman state rep, I served on the commission to study the expansion of Medicaid eligibility in New Hampshire. We were able to craft a compromise solution that was the foundation for the bill that eventually passed both chambers with bipartisan support. Some of what made this outcome possible were the mechanisms embedded in the eventual program that provided for strict accounting and circuit breakers that would shut down the program if it exceeded estimated enrollment and cost. Several of the original architects of the expansion program are in this room today. This and other entitlement programs have strict transparency policies and ongoing accountability mechanisms that ensure that beneficiaries of these taxpayer-funded programs are actually eligible and qualify to receive the benefits. And then we have the school voucher program, a New Hampshire entitlement benefiting less than 1% of our school-age children in the state, with unchecked enrollment and cost far exceeding anticipated numbers claimed by the Department of Education in the original fiscal note, with oversight outsourced to a group that has testified that they do not want to be held to annual means testing because they want every child to continue to benefit. A leniency and desire to look the other way that would never be tolerated by the legislature for Medicaid or SNAP beneficiaries, even though these programs provide far more essential services and products like health care and basic nutrition. And now with SB 252, this body is today again rejecting the right of the public to have ready access to basic information regarding the use of taxpayer dollars to fund school vouchers. The double standard is breathtaking when compared to any other taxpayer-funded entitlement. School vouchers funded with taxpayer dollars are not only administered by outside entities with little oversight and no ongoing means testing, but now, with rejection of this bill, their cost will remain beyond the scrutiny of the taxpayers who are funding them. I urge this body to return to the same fiscal discipline for which we are known and hold the school voucher program to the same standards as every other taxpayer-funded program in the state. Let's pass this bill to make the cost of school vouchers transparent to those who are paying for them, our property taxpayers, our constituents. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Sherman. Senator Gaida.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would be very comfortable passing this bill if we also included the fact that 74% of the students in the 11th grade are not competent in mathematics and 46% are not competent in literacy. Let's put that up there, as well as the comparative scores for these kids that are in the Education Freedom Account schools. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Gaida. Senator Bradley.
Yes, thank you very much. Mr. President, last week we debated a couple of bills that would have repealed or dramatically impacted education savings accounts. This bill is just one more attempt to undermine the choice that parents and their kids need in our education system. The fact that 1,800 kids have taken advantage of this, 1,600 who were presumably already taking advantage of a choice, is something that is well known. What hasn't been talked about in the debate so far this morning are the transition grants that the original legislation put forward to make sure that there was no impact on local property taxpayers. So let's not undermine what has been a very successful rollout of education savings accounts. Let's vote yes on the motion of inexpedient. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Bradley. Any further discussion? Senator Rosenwald.
Mr. President, I want to respond to the remarks of my colleagues that the school voucher program will not impact property taxes. I strongly disagree with that idea. In fact, I believe it will raise property taxes. I learned probably a decade ago from former Representative Neil Kirk to always look at the marginal cost or savings and not the average. Proponents of school voucher and the Education Commissioner claim that because the school districts spend an average of $19,000 per student, a district will save over $14,000 in local costs when any one student leaves for the voucher program and takes the state's $4,600 contribution with them. But let's think about a typical class of 23 students. If one of them leaves the public school, it doesn't change the fact that a classroom and a teacher are still needed for the 22 remaining students. The district still needs to heat the building, have running water, maintain buildings and grounds, and require this same number of school buses. The cafeteria will still be buying the same quantity of food. You would need a pretty large percentage of students leaving public school in a single grade in any district for savings to be realized. And DOE has never been able to quantify any marginal savings from the voucher program. That's because the fixed overhead costs do not decrease when students leave across varying grade levels and schools in a district. However, while the district maintains that same $19,000 cost for a student who's no longer there, the state is now not contributing its $4,600, and the local property taxpayers need to fill the gap. So the district has to raise not just the $14,000 per student that was the case when we were making an adequacy payment, but the entire $19,000. the district loses the whole $4,600 state aid amount for little to no marginal savings, but maintains the full cost. So I hope we will not claim that school vouchers won't impact property taxes when exactly the opposite is true. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Rosenwald. Senator Waters.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to respond briefly to the comments made by the senator from District 2. And, you know, the statistics on student assessment have been repeated a number of times. And always a concern. And I thought I'd look into that a little bit. And we don't require the students who are taking advantage of the voucher program to go into private or religious schools. We don't require testing in those schools. Now, if this body had any desire to have any accountability for the funding that's going out under these accounts, then we could have asked for testing to know whether or not the performance is there. Now, what we can look at are the charter school scores, because they have to take the testing. And, you know, I'm a strong supporter of charter schools, always have been. They really serve a great function. But look at the scores, and you'll find that there are a couple that do very well. You know, kudos to them. I think overall the average is just about what is being done in the public schools. But unfortunately, there are a number of charter schools where it's in the category of percentage that are competent, at competency, and it's 0 or less than 10%. They use the same designation of, you know, anything less than 10% is given the same designation of being less than 10%, but oftentimes it means 0, not one student. So I'm saying two things, I think. I wish that we were assessing students who are receiving public funding, and I think that would allow us to look more accurately at what educational function that this program is serving. But I think that, you know, using the competency and the student assessment figures on our public schools is perhaps an inadequate argument for this program. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Waters. Any further discussion? Senator Gannon.
So I'll just look at a bigger picture here. We don't have to look at any specific numbers. $4,600. You said here and there, there's like an odd kid maybe missing out of a 22-kid classroom. So I would argue that now you have one less kid for the teacher. You have more time for those other 22 students. We'll just take my district, for example. Timberlane's my local school district. If we lost 22 kids or so, you'd be out maybe $100,000 out of $70 million budget. Is that really that little de minimis amount that wouldn't even pay to paint a few classrooms? Is that really going to hurt the education in Timberlane?
Thank you for the question. I think I was speaking to the impact on property taxes, not the impact on the educational experience of the students that remain. But I guess I would be a proponent of smaller class sizes.
Can I rephrase? Can I follow
Further
up?
question?
Yes, I just want to rephrase that then. So if we lost 22 kids in my school district at Timberlane, it's $100,000. And you're saying out of a $70 million budget, is that $100,000 going to be that disruptive to my whole school district? When it could have a huge impact on these 22 kids who choose a better school.
I guess I can't comment on your district, but I would say in Nashua, we're not really fans of raising property taxes because the state doesn't maintain its
Thank you.
responsibility.
Thank you, Senator Rosenwald. Senator Sherman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just briefly wanted to respond to the comments of the good senator from District 3. Of the 3 bills that he cited, only one was a direct repeal. The other 2 actually marginally held this program, the voucher program, to the accountability, not even near any of the accountability that we have for other entitlements. So one was this one, Senator Susi's bill. The other was mine, which asked for annual means testing. In the current entitlements, such as Medicaid, you have ongoing, active, real-time means testing. In this one, you get means tested in the first year, and if you win the lottery and have several $1 million, you can still be taking money from your fellow taxpayers to send your child to to private or religious school. Nowhere do we have that. If that is a threat to this program is much more fragile or much more suspect than I ever suspected. If transparency for property taxpayers threatens this program as put forth by the senator from District 3, well, maybe we should know more about the program. Maybe there is something going on that taxpayers need to hear about, because if that transparency caused them to shut down the program or to react to the program, especially since many of the senators from the majority side don't believe there's a property tax impact, why would we be concerned about listing this on the property tax bill? I would ask that you overturn this the committee recommendation and let the taxpayers be fully informed so they can make the decision of whether this is an appropriate use of taxpayer dollars. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Sherman. Further discussion? The question is the adoption of the committee recommendation of inexpedient to legislate on Senate Bill 252. Are you ready for the question? Senator Susi requests a roll call. Senator Rosenwald seconds. Ready for the question? The clerk will call the roll.
Senator Hennessy?
Yes.
Senator Gaida?
Yes.
Senator Bradley?
Yes.
Senator Waters?
No.
Senator Prentice?
No.
Senator Gray?
Yes.
Senator French?
Yes.
Senator Ward?
Yes.
Senator Rishardi?
Yes.
Senator Khan?
No.
Senator Daniels?
Yes.
Senator Avard's excused. Senator Rosenwald?
No.
Senator Carson?
Yes.
Senator Whitley?
No.
Senator Kavanaugh?
No.
Senator Reagan?
Yes.
Senator Susi?
No.
Senator Birdsell?
Yes.
Senator D'Alessandro?
No.
Senator Perkins Quokka?
No.
Senator Gannon?
Yes.
Senator Sherman?
No.
Senator Morse?
Yes. The ayes have it, 13-10. The motion of inexpedient to legislate is adopted. The Senate will be attentive to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Committee on Election Law and Municipal Affairs, to which is referred Senate Bill 255, an act establishing redistricting criteria. Having considered the same, the committee recommends that the bill be re-referred to interim study by a vote of 3-2. Senator Gray for the committee.
Senator Gray.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 255 be referred to interim study. This bill would establish redistricting criteria. Senate Bill 255, as introduced, provides 7 criteria for redistricting. Several of the criteria are already required by the federal government or by the state of New Hampshire. A recent New Hampshire Supreme Court decision states the overriding objective of any legislatively adopted redistricting plan for the state legislature must be substantial equality of population among various legislative districts, so that the vote of any citizen is approximately equal to the weight of any other citizen in the state. The addition of criteria that districts must have compact shapes, avoid jagged edges and extensions, and consider the integrity of communities of interest will cause more confusion than clarity. Therefore, the Election Law and Municipal Affairs Committee asks for your support on the motion of interim study. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Gray. The motion is referred to interim study. Is there any discussion? Senator Perkins Quokka.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in opposition to the recommendation of interim study. Per the New Hampshire Constitution, the legislature is required to redraw its legislative districts every 10 years following the release of the census. The aim in redrawing the districts is to ensure that our political representation is reflective of our population. At the core, redistricting is about fair and equal representation. Every district and every election should allow each New Hampshire resident's vote to count equally. Over the years, the redistricting process in New Hampshire has become more and more different. Current legislation allows the redistricting process to happen with little public understanding of the criteria used, and while public input was taken this year, it's not always clear to the public exactly how the maps are drawn or on what basis the legislators are making their decisions. This can lead to gerrymandered districts aimed at keeping one political party in power for a decade. SB 255 aims to protect New Hampshire voters by creating a prohibition on gerrymandering, including partisan gerrymandering. In December of last year, we saw the Ohio Supreme Court strike down a clearly gerrymandered map on the basis of a state law, and that is the aim of this legislation. By putting this prohibition in statute, New Hampshire makes it clear that under no circumstances will gerrymandering of any kind, including political gerrymandering, be tolerated. The best ideas are arrived at through robust debate where citizens representing differing ideologies are given the opportunity to engage and contribute to our democracy. By creating redistricting guidelines, we can guarantee that future legislators will draw fair and impartial maps based on people and not politics, based on representation and not partisan power, and we can help heal and unite our country.
Thank you, Senator Perkins Cuoco. The motion is referred to interim study. Is there any further discussion? Senator Perkins Cuoco requests a roll call. Is there a second? Senator Susi seconds. Question is on the adoption of the committee recommendation of referred interim study on Senate Bill 255. You ready for the question? The clerk will call the roll.
Senator Hennessy.
Yes.
Senator Gaida.
Yes.
Senator Bradley.
Yes.
Senator Waters.
No.
Senator Prentice.
No.
Senator Gray.
Yes.
Senator French.
Yes.
Senator Ward.
Yes.
Senator Rishardi.
Yes.
Senator Khan.
No.
Senator Daniels.
Yes.
Senator Avard's excused. Senator Rosenwald.
No.
Senator Carson.
Yes.
Senator Whitley.
No.
Senator Kavanaugh.
No.
Senator Reagan.
Yes.
Senator Susi.
No.
Senator Birdsell.
Yes.
Senator D'Alessandro.
No.
Senator Perkins Cuoco.
No.
Senator Gannon. Senator Sherman.
No.
Senator Morse.
Yes. The ayes have it. The motion of referred to interim study is adopted 13-10. The Senate will be attentive to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Committee on Election Law and Municipal Affairs, to which was referred Senate Bill 328, an act relative to the date of the state primary election. Having considered the same, the committee recommends that the bill is ought to pass with an amendment by a vote of 4-1. Senator Gray for the committee.
Senator Bradley.
Request a 1-minute recess, please.
Senator Senate will come out of recess. Without objection, will special order Senate Bill 328 to March 17th session. Senate will be attentive to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Committee on Energy and Natural Resources, to which was referred Senate Bill 259, an act relative to the definition of municipal host for the purposes of limited electrical energy producers. Having considered the same, the committee recommends that the bill is ought to pass with an amendment by a vote of 3-0. Senator Gaida for the committee.
Senator Gaida.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 259 ought to pass with amendment. The purpose of Senate Bill 259 is to slightly amend the definition of municipal host and political subdivisions. Previously, House Bill 315 raised the net metering cap from 1 to 5 megawatts. However, it limited participation exclusively to political subdivisions. Under House Bill 315, the term political subdivisions is defined as any city, town, county, school district, chartered public school, village district, school administration unit, or any district or entity created for a special purpose, administered or funded by any of the above-named governmental units. Senate Bill 259 adds the State of New Hampshire Housing Authorities or quasi-public entity and the Pease Development Authority to this definition. The Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee asks for your support on the motion of ought to pass with amendment on Senate Bill 259. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Gaida. The motion is ought to pass with amendment. The bill is now on second reading. The first order of business is the committee amendment. Is there any discussion on the committee amendment? The question is on the adoption of the committee amendment. You ready for the question? All in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it. The committee amendment is adopted. The bill is on second reading. Is there any further discussion or amendments? Senator Perkins Quokka.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to very briefly thank my colleagues on the Energy and Natural Resources Committee for the work on this bill together. I think it's been important for particularly entities in my district to be able to participate in this slight expansion of net metering. So I just wanted to express my thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Perkins Quokka. The question is the adoption of ought to pass as amended on Senate Bill 259. Are you ready for the question? All in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it. The motion of ought to pass as amended is adopted, and it's ordered to third reading. Senate will be attentive to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Committee on Energy and Natural Resources, to which was referred Senate Bill 269FN, an act relative to New Hampshire weatherization program. Having considered the same, the committee recommends that the bill is ought to pass with an amendment by a vote of 3-0. Senator Gaida for the committee.
Senator Gaida.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 269 ought to pass with amendment. Senate Bill 269 establishes a commission to study methods of participation for maintaining an energy-saving weatherization program, assisting in the lowering the overall energy consumption for New Hampshire families. The cost of energy has gone up significantly. For example, a barrel of oil now is close to $100. Oil and propane do not contribute to the weatherization fund, yet they take up a significant portion of the fund. This commission will allow all the stakeholders to come together and find out the best way to fund the weatherization program in New Hampshire. The Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committees ask for your support on the motion of ought to pass to vote down the committee amendment so that we can introduce another amendment by the senator from District 20. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Gaida. The bill is now on second reading. The motion is ought to pass with amendment. The first order of business is the committee amendment. Is there any discussion on the committee amendment? The question is on the adoption of the committee amendment. You ready for the question? All in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it. The committee amendment is adopted. The noes have it. The committee amendment is defeated. The bill is on second reading. Is there any further discussion or amendments? Senator D'Alessandro.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to introduce floor amendment 0750S and speak to my amendment.
Senator D'Alessandro offers floor amendment 0750 and may speak to his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. The floor amendment makes a slight change to number 11 on line 17 of page 2. It corrects the name of the organization, which was misstated in the committee amendment. It also states that there will be 2 members from New Hampshire's Community Action Partnerships and stipulates that one be from the partnership with the largest population served. Thank you, Mr. President, and I ask my colleagues to support the amendment and to support the bill as amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator D'Alessandro. The question is the adoption of floor amendment 0750. Are you ready for the question? All in favor say aye. All opposed say no. This time the ayes have it, and the floor amendment is adopted. The bill is still on second reading and open for further discussion and/or amendments. The question is the adoption of ought to pass as amended on Senate Bill 269. You ready for the question? All in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted, and it's ordered to third reading. Senate will be attentive to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Committee on Energy and Natural Resources, to which was referred Senate Bill 367, an act relative to the regulatory status of advanced recycling manufacturing facilities. Having considered the same, the committee recommends that the bill is ought to pass with an amendment by a vote of 4-0. Senator Guida for the committee.
Senator Guida.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 367 ought to pass with amendment. Senate Bill 367 brings opportunity and the possibility of new private investment to New Hampshire to establish facilities for advanced recycling. Advanced recycling can reduce the amount of hard-to-recycle plastics from going to landfills, as it takes post-use plastics and uses chemical processes to convert them into materials for new products. 15 states have passed legislation to clarify regulations for advanced recycling as manufacturers rather than solid waste facilities. This is exactly what Senate Bill 367 accomplishes. Bringing this industry to New Hampshire would mean good jobs and another tool in our strategy for managing materials after use in our solid waste stream. The amendment clarifies the language for DES authority as it relates to advanced recycling facilities. DES supports this bill. The Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee asks for your support on the motion of ought to pass with amendment on Senate Bill 367. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Guida. The motion is ought to pass with amendment. The bill is now on second reading. The first order of business is the committee amendment. Is there any discussion on the committee amendment? The question is on the adoption of the committee amendment. You ready for the question? All in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it. The committee amendment is adopted. The bill is on second reading. Is there any further discussion or amendments? The question is on the adoption of ought to pass as amended on Senate Bill 367. You ready for the question? All in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it. The motion of ought to pass as amended is adopted, and it's ordered to third reading. Senate will be attentive to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Committee on Energy and Natural Resources, to which was referred Senate Bill 370 FN, an act allowing the university system and community college system to be municipal host electric customer generators. Having considered the same, the committee recommends that the bill be re-referred to interim study by a vote of 3-0. Senator Waters for the committee.
Senator Waters.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 370 be referred to interim study. Senate Bill 370 would allow the New Hampshire University System, Community College System, and Pease Development Authority to be considered political subdivision for the purpose of municipal net metering. Senate Bill 370 is submitted at the request of the University of New Hampshire in collaboration with the Pease Development Authority. The substance of this bill, however, has been incorporated into Senate Bill 259. Therefore, the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee asks for your support on the motion of interim study on Senate Bill 370. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Waters. The motion is referred to interim study. Is there any discussion? The question is the adoption of the committee recommendation of referred to interim study on Senate Bill 370. You ready for the question? All in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it. The motion of referred to interim study is adopted. Senate will be attentive to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Committee on Energy and Natural Resources, to which was referred Senate Bill 424 FN, an act relative to renewable energy and natural gas. Having considered the same, the committee recommends that the bill is ought to pass with an amendment by a vote of 4-0. Senator Guida for the committee.
Senator Guida.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 424 FN ought to pass with amendment. Senate Bill 424 is an enabling piece of legislation that would allow the state's natural gas utilities to procure a certain amount of renewable natural gas, known as RNG, with approval from the Public Utility Commission. Renewable natural gas is created from decomposing organic matter. The gas, which would otherwise be emitted into the air, is captured and purified so that it meets the same standards as conventional natural gas. It can be created from animal waste, food waste, landfills, low-grade wood, and other sources. This legislation creates the ability for gas utilities to incorporate RNG into their supply while also allowing the state to benefit from local investments, local job creation, and local energy options. This creates a winning solution for New Hampshire businesses and customers while preserving energy choice and optimizing our existing energy distribution system. The committee amendment is the work product of a robust group of stakeholders, including the Department of Energy. The amended language allows the gas utilities to procure up to 5% of RNG with the approval of the PUC and after demonstrating that it is in the public interest to do so. It also requires the utilities to work with the Department of Energy in issuing proposals to procure RNG. Further, this bill requires a study to be conducted by the Department of Energy no less than 3 years after this legislation takes effect in order to study all impacts that this legislation may have, including benefits to the state, any impact to ratepayers, and an assessment of the existing RNG market. This amended piece of legislation allows the state to begin to explore the benefits of utilizing drop-in energy sources like RNG and how these resources can green our pipeline system without a subsidy or mandate, all while protecting ratepayers with the proper guardrails put in place by this bill. The Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee asks for your support on the motion about to pass with amendment on Senate Bill 424 FN. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Gaida. The motion is ought to pass with amendment. The bill is now on second reading. The first order of business is the committee amendment. Is there any discussion on the committee amendment? The question is on the adoption of the committee amendment. You ready for the question? All in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it. The committee amendment is adopted. The bill is on second reading. Is there any further discussion or amendments? The question is on the adoption of ought to pass as amended on Senate Bill 424. You ready for the question? All in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it. The motion of ought to pass as amended is adopted, and it's ordered to the Committee on Finance. Senate will be attentive to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Committee on Energy and Natural Resources, to which was referred Senate Bill 452 FN, an act relative to lead in drinking water in schools and licensed child care facilities. Having considered the same, the committee recommends that the bill is ought to pass with an amendment by a vote of 4-0. Senator Waters for the committee.
Senator Waters.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 452 ought to pass with amendment. The purpose of Senate Bill 452 is to protect drinking water in schools and child care facilities. The issue is that children are being exposed to lead through contaminated drinking water in schools and child care facilities. While no amount of lead is safe for a child to ingest, even small amounts of lead can result in irreversible harm, including loss of cognitive ability and behavioral problems. The EPA reported that lead in drinking water contributes to 20% of a person's total exposure to lead. As a result, Senate Bill 247, enacted in 2018, requires that schools and child care facilities must test their drinking water for lead. Results from subsequent tests revealed widespread lead contamination in schools throughout New Hampshire. Senate Bill 452's solution to this problem of removing lead in drinking water is by establishing a limit of 5 parts per billion to accord with a current mitigation funding program and to anticipate the possible EPA level to be determined by that agency. The bill requires schools and licensed child care facilities to continue the testing schedule implemented in 2016, phasing in the new levels and expected mitigation planning to test drinking water for lead and to notify parents of tests with high results. The bill also directs DES to include daycare centers in mitigation funding expected from the EPA in the coming months. The Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee asks for your support on the motion of ought to pass with amendment on Senate Bill 452. And thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Waters. The motion is ought to pass with amendment. The bill is now on second reading. The first order of business is the committee amendment. Is there any discussion on the committee amendment? Senator Gaida.
Thank you, Mr. President. Very briefly, I'd like to express my thanks to my colleague from Senate District 4 for addressing the concerns that I raised in this bill, and I think it came out with a better product. So I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Gaida. Senator D'Alessandro.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I too would like to thank my colleagues for working on this amendment. The bill came through. We knew that it needed to be fixed. Not everybody's happy, as always, to use a phrase from the majority leader. If you have half happy, half unhappy, you're almost there. You're almost there. Well, Senator Waters, thank you so much for getting us almost there, because almost there gives us an opportunity to get there. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator D'Alessandro. Senator Gannon.
Waters. I got a couple calls last night from daycare facilities in my district with like 50 kids. They're big old homes that have been fixed up. They were very concerned. I know costs will go to fiscal, so I understand that. But they were concerned that the 5 parts per billion, I don't understand the science behind it, was really, really, really tough. Is this like, are we going to be the most prohibitive in the nation? Is this like an overreach on how far, or is this good science and this is where the state of the art of the water treatment should be? Quickly.
Thank you for your question, Senator. And, you know, I mean, it's pretty clear from the pediatricians and others that you'd like to have no lead exposure. And goodness knows what incredible work we've done in this body on lead exposure from lead paint. And that was huge and important to do. And we all recognize there's a problem with drinking water as well. It is, you know, what we're trying to balance here is that for each amount that you come down from the current kind of 50, we're testing some that requirements at 15, we have some at 5 now. The bill wanted us to go to 1. And if you know, we had from figures from DES that if you, each one of those, this is the number of daycare facilities or schools which are suddenly going to be in difficulty here. We found that if we did the 5, the numbers who will likely pop positive are reduced greatly. But it is also why we really must do something about securing funding for daycare facilities. And I was reminded by my colleague, Senator Rosenwald, that there is in fact some funding currently available through the Lead Paint Mitigation Fund, which can actually has flexible enough to use for this purpose. And so right now, child care centers can apply for some of that, but we need to do much more. Now, the understanding is that there is money from the EPA that is in the infrastructure bill for this purpose. It's likely that the authorization funding will get passed in March, and then they'll do the regulations. So we're going to see some funding for that, and that's why I put in the bill to take care of that. Now, in terms of your question about the numbers, our neighboring states are at 4. 5 seem to make sense to us. So there are other states that are lower, there are others that are higher. I think this is a good number. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senators. The question is the adoption of the committee amendment. Are you ready for the question? All in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it. The committee amendment is adopted. The bill is on second reading. Is there any further discussion or amendments? The question is on the adoption of ought to pass as amended on Senate Bill 452. You ready for the question? All in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it. The motion of ought to pass as amended is adopted, and it's ordered to the Committee on Finance. Senate will be attentive to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Committee on Finance, to which was referred Senate Bill 261FN, an act relative to net metering participation. Having considered the same, the committee recommends that the bill is ought to pass by a vote of 5-0. Senator Gaida for the committee.
Senator Gaida.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 261FN ought to pass. This bill clarifies provisions relative to net energy metering participation and allows customer generators to receive a payment for negative net energy usage during the subsequent billing cycle in an amount equivalent to certain credits. The Department of Energy has stated this bill would allow relatively larger customer generators to participate in net metering without having load behind the meter, even if they do not group net meter, and to be credited or paid at the default service rate for any net exports of electricity generated. This would be a change from the current PUC-approved net metering tariff provisions and would permit certain renewable energy product developers and other customer generators to net meter without sharing the benefits of that with group members. This would increase the potential for developing new projects eligible to net meter. The department indicated Senate Bill 261 FN may increase potential cost shifting from participating to non-participating customers that is properly attributable to net metering tariff provisions. It is also possible that net meter distribution generation will reduce transmission costs and avoid other utility costs. Senate Finance Committee recommends passage of SB 261 FN and asks for your support. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Guyer. The motion is ought to pass. The bill is on second reading. Is there any discussion? The question is the adoption of the committee recommendation of ought to pass on Senate Bill 261. You ready for the question? All in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it. The motion ought to pass is adopted and it's ordered to third reading. Senate will be attentive to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Committee on Finance, to which was referred Senate Bill 268 FN, an act relative to the approval of power purchase agreements for offshore wind energy resources from the Gulf of Maine. Having considered the same, the committee recommends that the bill is ought to pass by a vote of 5-0. Senator Reagan for the committee.
Senator Reagan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 268 FN ought to pass. This bill directs the Public Utilities Commission to ensure that certain requirements relative to impact and use studies are met prior to approving power purchase agreements for energy derived from the Gulf of Maine. The Department of Energy indicated if purchase power agreements to procure power from an offshore wind development are entered into, all of the costs associated would be covered by revenue from the utilities requesting approval of same. Those utilities would then be allowed to recover those expenses through the rates they charge utility customers, including the state, county, and local governments. The Department of Environmental Services states the purpose of Senate Bill 268 is to provide a mechanism to collect and distribute funds generated through mitigation requirements related to the development of offshore wind energy. The future development of offshore wind energy in the Gulf of Maine may have unforeseen impacts on ocean users, such as the commercial fishing industry. The federal permits that allow for the energy development may require mitigation of those impacts. SB 268 would have those dollars deposited in the Coastal Fund. This bill only refers to the state. Counties and localities are not included, nor are they likely to be impacted ocean users or wind energy developers. The Senate Finance Committee recommends passage of Senate Bill 268 and asks for your support. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Reagan. The motion is ought to pass. The bill is on second reading. Is there any discussion? The question is the adoption of the committee recommendation of ought to pass on Senate Bill 268. You ready for the question? All in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it. The motion of ought to pass is adopted and it's ordered to third reading. The Senate will be attentive to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Committee on Finance, to which was referred Senate Bill 366 FN, an act requiring an audit of ballots cast in the 2022 primary and general election. Having considered the same, the committee recommends that the bill is ought to pass by a vote of 5-0. Senator Daniels for the committee.
Senator Daniels.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 366 FN ought to pass. This bill authorizes the Secretary of State to conduct an audit of ballots cast in the state's 2022 primary and general elections by procuring equipment to scan and record ballots. The fiscal impact of Senate Bill 366 would be a one-time cost to the state general fund expenditures of $50,000 to $100,000 in fiscal year 2023 to purchase and program a new high-speed scanner. The Senate Finance Committee recommends passage of Senate Bill 366 FN and asks for your support. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Daniels. The motion is ought to pass. The bill is on second reading. Is there any discussion? The question is the adoption of the committee recommendation of ought to pass on Senate Bill 366. You ready for the question? All in favor, say aye. All opposed, say no. The ayes have it. The motion of ought to pass is adopted, and it's ordered to third reading. Senate will be attentive to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Committee on Finance, to which was referred Senate Bill 396 FN, an act relative to solid waste management. Having considered the same, the committee recommends that the bill is ought to pass by a vote of 6-0. Senator D'Alessandro for the committee.
Senator D'Alessandro.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 396 FN ought to pass. This bill authorizes the Department of Environmental Services to enter into an agreement with an applicant seeking a solid waste facility permit, requiring such applicant to cover costs associated with contracting with a professional engineer or hydrologist to to assist the department in determining whether a solid waste application is complete and whether such application meets the technical requirements statute and administrative rules. That's a mouthful. The Senate Finance Committee recommends passage of Senate Bill 396FN and asks for your support. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator D'Alessandro. The motion is ought to pass. The bill is now on second reading. Is there any discussion or amendments? Senator Daniels.
Mr. President, I move floor amendment 0810S. Wish to speak?
Senator Daniels offers floor amendment 0810 and may speak to his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill gave discretion to the department to require the hiring of a hydrogeologist at the applicant's expense. And I expressed in committee that I didn't have any problem with the bill, except that if the applicant was a political subdivision of the state, we could get ourselves into 28A, issue an unfunded mandate by placing that requirement on the local communities. So my amendment, 0810S, simply adds a statement at the end that says this paragraph shall not apply to political subdivisions of the state, feeling that it's much less expensive to add that one line than to deal with court cases if the department decided to require that hiring of a community. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Daniels. Senator Guida to the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in opposition to this amendment. I do so because of several reasons. I don't view this as an unfunded mandate. It would be no more of a mandate than a town building a building having to comply with state fire codes and building codes. Secondly, the applicant in this case is looking to open a landfill. I would find that it might be considered irresponsible not to do a geologic survey, considering the possibility of leachate and the examples we've got with Coakley and Kennechuck and so forth. So I think that the applicant would want to do this. And thirdly, if we require municipalities or political subdivisions, if we don't require them to expend these funds, we then wind up passing that municipality's cost off to other towns or the other state taxpayers. And for those reasons, I speak against this floor amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Guida. Any further discussion on the amendment? Senator Rosenwald.
Mr. President, I'm hiding behind your big screen.
Thank you.
I also would like to speak in opposition to the floor amendment. First of all, there's no requirement that a political subdivision apply for a landfill. And secondly, if they do choose to apply for a landfill, they'd only be required to pay for the study if the state's subject matter experts found it important in assessing potential environmental impact. So if the Department of Environmental Services believes the study is necessary, wouldn't a municipality in its due diligence want to know if there's significant environmental impact? I can't think of a city or a town that doesn't have access to solid waste disposal in some way. So we're not talking about a newly mandated program here, and I don't see a 28A issue. So because the Finance Committee discussed exempting political subdivisions, chose not to, and recommended unanimously that the bill ought to pass in its current form, I hope we will stay with that recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Rosenwald. The question is on the adoption of the floor amendment. Further discussion? Seeing none, you ready for the question? All in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The noes have it. The floor amendment is defeated. The bill is still on second reading and open for further discussion and/or amendments. The question is on the adoption of ought to pass on Senate Bill 396, Are you ready for the question? All in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted and it's ordered to third reading. Senate will be attentive to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Committee on Finance, to which was referred Senate Bill 407FN, an act relative to expanding Medicaid to include certain postpartum health care services and making an appropriation therefore. Having considered the same, the committee recommends that the bill is ought to pass with an amendment by a vote of 5-1. Senator Rosenwald for the committee.
Senator Rosenwald.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 407FN ought to pass with amendment. This bill requires the Department of Health and Human Services to submit a state plan amendment expanding postpartum coverage under Medicaid. Currently, the state provides Medicaid coverage to pregnant women with incomes up to 196% of the federal poverty level for 60 days postpartum, which would be extended to 12 months under the bill. In addition, the Granted Advantage program, Medicaid expansion, currently covers individuals with incomes up to 138% of poverty. Senate Bill 407FN will effectively provide 10 months' worth of postpartum coverage for those between 138% and 196% of the federal poverty level. The committee amended the date of the appropriation of $200,000 to June 30th, 2023. The Senate Finance Committee recommends passage of Senate Bill 407FN as amended and asks for your support. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Rosenwald. The motion is ought to pass with amendment. The bill is now on second reading. The first order of business is the committee amendment. Is there any discussion on the committee amendment? The question is the adoption of the committee amendment. You ready for the question? All in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it. The committee amendment is adopted. The bill is on second reading. Is there any further discussion or amendments? The question is on the adoption of ought to pass as amended on Senate Bill 407. You ready for the question? All in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it. The motion of ought to pass as amended is adopted and it's ordered to third reading. Senate will be attentive to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Committee on Finance, to which was referred Senate Bill 422FN, an act establishing an adult dental benefit under the state Medicaid program. Having considered the same, the committee recommends that the bill is ought to pass with an amendment by a vote of 6-0. Senator Rosenwald for the committee.
Senator Rosenwald.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 422FN ought to pass with amendment. This bill requires the Commissioner of Health and Human Services to provide dental care to adults in the Medicaid program beginning next spring. The bill appropriates nearly $19 million from the Centene settlement to the department for the purpose of funding the non-federal share of the dental benefit for the first several years. The committee amended the bill by adding an annual cap of $1,500 maximum benefit per year, excluding preventative services. This mirrors the department's plan for the benefit. The Senate Finance Committee recommends passage of Senate Bill 422FN as amended and asks for your support. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Rosenwald. The motion is ought to pass with amendment. The bill is on second reading. The first order of business is the committee amendment. Is there any discussion on the committee amendment? The question is the adoption of the committee amendment. You ready for the question? All in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it. The committee amendment is adopted. The bill is on second reading. Is there any further discussion or amendments? Senator Bradley.
Much. I really appreciate the hard work of the Finance Committee on this bill and the bipartisan spirit in which it hopefully again will pass this body unanimously. I think it's important as we think about this that the use of the Centene settlement is what enables us to pay for it in the short run, but in the long run, a growing economy that produces significant revenues is what will allow us to pay for this benefit in the long run. And there's been a bit of discussion this morning about the business enterprise tax, and you just can't look at 1 month to 1 month revenues without understanding the tax credit of the BET against the BPT. But I think it's important to note that business profits tax revenues are $107 million above plan, and our overall revenues are $167 million above plan, almost 14%. That's extraordinary. That's how we do things like pay for this dental benefit, and it's important for all of us, hopefully with the same bipartisan spirit that we have to pass a dental benefit, have that same bipartisan spirit to make sure our economy stays strong, that we make New Hampshire the most competitive state in the nation to grow a business, to locate a business, and that we use these revenues for things like the dental benefit, affordable housing, and other problems that need to be resolved. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Bradley. Any further discussion? Roll call has been requested by Senator Rosenwald, second by everyone. Senator Perkins Coker.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to briefly thank Senator Rosenwald for her really hard work on this bill. I know that this has been a 2-year process, and in my district, I have the Friends of Lafayette House, which is an adult living community for multiple kinds of people with disabilities to live together and function, and I know that they're really excited to see this benefit come through because it's another way that they can independently live their lives, and so I just wanted to thank her for the hard work she's put in. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Perkins Coker. Senator Sherman.
I would just like to briefly thank Senator Rosenwald for not just 2 years, but many years of trying to get this through, and remind everybody that the other way this will eventually be sustained is the cost savings to the state for this population. States that have gotten rid of this benefit have really regretted it. States that have added this benefit over time have actually found enormous cost savings because of the benefit on the healthcare side. Decreased healthcare costs, increased workforce capacity, all of this is the result of this visionary program, and many states have shown this, so thank you.
Thank you, Senator Sherman. Senator Rosenwald.
Just quickly be remiss if we did not also acknowledge and thank Senator Bradley for his real commitment to this over a number of years.
Thank you, Senator Rosenwald. Any further discussion? Roll call is requested by Senator Rosenwald and seconded by Senator Hennessy. The question is on the adoption of ought to pass as amended on Senate Bill 422. You ready for the question? Clerk will call the roll.
Senator Hennessy.
Yes.
Senator Gaida.
Yes.
Senator Bradley.
Yes.
Senator Waters.
Yes.
Senator Prentice.
Yes.
Senator Gray.
Yes.
Senator French.
Yes.
Senator Ward.
Yes.
Senator Ricciardi.
Yes.
Senator Khan.
Yes.
Senator Daniels.
Yes.
Senator Avard's excused. Senator Rosenwald.
Yes.
Senator Carson.
Yes.
Senator Whitley.
Yes.
Senator Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Senator Reagan.
Yes.
Senator Susie.
Yes.
Senator Bertzel.
Yes.
Senator D'Alessandro.
Yes.
Senator Perkins Coker.
Yes.
Senator Gannon.
Yes.
Senator Sherman. Senator Morse.
Yes. The ayes have it. The motion of ought to pass as amended is adopted 23-0, and it's ordered to third reading. Good job. Senate will be attentive to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Committee on Finance, to which was referred Senate Bill 423 FN, an act relative to closed-loop referral system in the Department of Health and Human Services. Having considered the same, the committee recommends that the bill is ought to pass by a vote of 6-0. Senator Gaida for the committee.
Senator Gaida.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 423 FN ought to pass. This bill establishes privacy and security for a closed-loop referral system established by a private entity under contract with the Department of Health and Human Services. to secure the personal health information and personally identifiable information of state citizens, the bill establishes a process for obtaining consent whereby specific language requests the individual's approval. Senate Bill 423FN also establishes a process for notifying individuals in the event of a data breach. The Senate Finance Committee recommends passage of Senate Bill 423 and asks for your support. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Gaia. The motion is ought to pass. The bill is on second reading. Is there any discussion? The question is on the adoption of the committee recommendation of ought to pass on Senate Bill 423. You ready for the question? All in favor say aye. Opposed say no. The ayes have it. The motion of ought to pass is adopted and it's ordered to third reading. Senate will be attentive to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Committee on Finance, to which was referred Senate Bill 440FN, an act relative to the Office of Offshore Wind Industry Development. Having considered the same, the committee recommends that the bill is ought to pass by a vote of 6-0. Senator Hennessy for the committee.
Senator Hennessy.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 440FN ought to pass. This bill directs the Office of Offshore Wind Industry Development, Department of Energy, to advise on the development of clean energy resources in the Gulf of Maine and the purchase of power by New Hampshire Public Utilities from these resources. SB 440FN requires the office to generate a report relative to the same. The Senate Finance Committee recommends passage of SB 440FN and asks for your support. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Hennessy. The motion is ought to pass. The bill is now on second reading. Is there any discussion? The question is the adoption of the committee recommendation of ought to pass on Senate Bill 440. You ready for the question? All in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it. The motion of ought to pass is adopted and it's ordered to third reading. Senate will be attentive to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Committee on Health and Human Services, to which was referred Senate Bill 419FN, an act relative to the public health networks. Having considered the same, the committee recommends that the bill is ought to pass with an amendment by a vote of 3-0. Senator Whitley for the committee.
Senator Whitley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that Senate Bill 419FN ought to pass with amendment. This bill, as introduced, would codify the 13 New Hampshire public health networks. As amended, Senate Bill 419FN would create a commission to study public health networks. This creation of a commission is crucial to addressing the public health of our state and finding viable and effective solutions to our public health infrastructure. During the COVID-19 pandemic, we have seen the regional public health networks serve many vital functions in our communities, ranging from education and outreach to establishing vaccination drives. We should use this opportunity to better evaluate those networks and see how they can be strengthened and supported. A majority of the Senate Health and Human Services Committee asked for your support on the motion of ought to pass with amendment on Senate Bill 419FN. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Whitley. The motion is ought to pass with amendment. The bill is on second reading. The first order of business is the committee amendment. Is there any discussion on the committee amendment? The question is on the adoption of the committee amendment. You ready for the question? All opposed say no. The ayes have it. The committee amendment is adopted. The bill is on second reading. Is there any further discussion or amendments? Senator Prentice.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today in support of Senate Bill 419FN, establishing a commission to study the delivery of public health services in New Hampshire through the 13 regional public health networks. In the late 1990s, Turning Point grants helped to establish these networks as a regional approach to the delivery of public health services, bringing together communities that traditionally share services including fire, emergency medical services, mutual aid, that are geographically aligned, as well as work within the same hospital and healthcare communities. As you may already know, not all New Hampshire cities and towns can afford on their own to have a dedicated public health department, which has challenged our ability to establish a sustainable public health infrastructure. Large cities like Manchester and Nashua have full-time departments. Portsmouth, as I understand, has a part-time public health department. The rest of the state depends on a regional approach. In the mid-2000s, federal dollars came to New Hampshire to build out our public health emergency preparedness capacity. Most notably, this responsibility was placed within those networks. Many of you have come to know the work of these networks through our response to COVID-19, including regional testing and the vaccination sites, as well as the vaccination booster sites. The state's health improvement plan cites regional approaches and infrastructure for public health as priorities. In Appendix C specifically, what forces of change are impacting New Hampshire includes a focus on addressing limited public health capacity and the ability to respond to emerging issues. This includes our public health networks. Now more than ever, we need to understand the importance of a coordinated public health delivery and the work that the public health networks perform. This commission will review the operations of the 13 current public health networks, review regional public health priorities across the state, propose a plan for the provision and implementation of sustainable programs, practices, governance, and policies that are evidence-based to improve health outcomes across New Hampshire. It will review the management of public health emergencies at the state and local level and review the coordination of services among partners, including local public health officers, and propose a plan for optimizing these services. I urge my colleagues to support the ought to pass recommendation as amended for Senate Bill 419 FN. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Prentice. The question is on the adoption of ought to pass as amended on Senate Bill 419. Are you ready for the question? All in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it. The motion of ought to pass as amended is adopted and it's ordered to third reading. Senate will be attentive to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Committee on Judiciary, to which was referred Senate Bill 298, an act repealing the law relative to certain discrimination in public workplaces and education. Having considered the same, the committee recommends that the bill is inexpedient to legislate by a vote of 3-2. Senator French for the committee.
Senator French.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 298 inexpedient to legislate. This bill would repeal the law relative to certain discrimination in public workplaces and education. We currently exist in a world full of divisive debate that often pits our citizens against one another. That is why the current statute is so important, as it prohibits an educator from advocating for a belief that a student or a student's family may not believe in or support. Unquestionably, our schools are not a place for shaming and indoctrinating our students to only believe in the position an educator may dictate to them. These institutions are a place for learning, not advocacy and propaganda. Our students deserve to learn in an environment that teaches to the facts and allows them to develop their own beliefs informed by their families and their personal morals, free from the fear of being shamed or exiled by their peers or educational staff. In order to protect our students and their beliefs, the majority of the Judiciary Committee asks for your support in the motion of inexpedient to legislate on Senate Bill 298. Thank you, Ms. President.
Okay, the pending motion is inexpedient to legislate. Is there any further discussion? Senator Gannon? Yes.
Senator French, so to me it seems clear. I know other committee members may not, but I look at the wording all over the place. So what the bill is really saying, you just can't advocate, you can't compel someone to express a belief in. They still can read any book or teach anything, right? It's when you go beyond a certain point, when you advocate that you have to express a belief, like, say, I know it's been brought up in my school, systemic racism, inherent bias. When you tell someone that, you know, you're white, you are automatically, you're inherently biased. That's where they'd go a bridge too far. Is that correct?
That's right, and that's what we heard in committee. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Waters?
Thank you, Madam President, and I want to speak in opposition to the ITL motion. Senate Bill 298 gives us an opportunity to repeal the banned concepts provision of RSA 19340, so that if passed, do not create a burden on our schools and damage the open and free discussion that ensures an educated citizenship and a strong and fully included in the American story. Much of received history for centuries presented a version of America that excluded stories of people of color and women, stories that often reveal resistance to oppression and present a more inclusive vision of America and of the struggle for freedom. There's much at stake for our future as a state, and this requires an honest engagement with our past, especially in the light of the drastic reduction of teaching history and social studies in New Hampshire schools. What is also at stake is a much fuller, richer, and more powerful understanding of the struggle for freedom in our country, a struggle that is ever unfolding and must be celebrated. This law, and others like it across the nation, reflect larger struggles over recognition of the centrality of slavery and its aftermath in the very substance and history of our nation. For centuries, this history has been excluded or mythologized in what has been called educational malpractice. And now our state statute prescribes that such misinterpretation of our history is the law of the land. In New Hampshire, the current legislation is likely to accelerate the decline in the teaching of the history and social studies, at the very time when a fuller history of our state and nation is available. So why is the current statute so flawed? 19340, here's the heart of the statute and the source of the language that sows confusion and casts a pall over free discussion and a full history and its dire consequences for educators. I quote, that an individual, by virtue of his age or sex, gender, identity, sexual orientation, race, creed, color, marital status, familial status, mental or physical disability, religion, or national origin, is inherently racist, sexist, or oppressive, whether consciously or unconsciously. The word inherently is one of the biggest problems here. In the September 2021 guidance, Attorney General Formella asserts that the Act's use of the term inherently must be read to include belonging by settled habit. And I really recommend to my colleagues that you read the Attorney General's decision or guidance. Formella says that the Act does not prohibit teaching that certain groups are biased or racist because of external action or external factors such as current or historical discrimination, stereotyping, environmental, or cultural messing. But isn't that exactly what creates the settled habit that can't be taught? Well, maybe the dictionary can help us. As Webster's has it, inherently is a usual way of behaving, something that a person does often in a regular and repeated way, a settled tendency or usual manner of behavior, or the beliefs, customs, arts, etc. of a particular society, group, place, or time. That's settled habit, which the Attorney General says we can't talk about. Now, that description of the definition it's a really pretty good description of just what societies and cultures do, creating settled habit, ways of being and acting that let one know who they are, in our case, as Americans. We are all subject, in Formella's words, to external action or external actions such as current or historical discrimination, stereotype, environment, or cultural messaging about race, gender, and so forth. But to point that out now as a teacher means a lawsuit or disciplinary action. Well, words have history and words have consequences. And this is the case of the word inherently. You've probably not heard the first draft of the Declaration of Independence when Jefferson wrote, "We hold these truths to be sacred and undeniable, that all men are created equal and independent, that from that equal creation they derive rights inherent and inalienable." But he changes that to "we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights." Well, why did he delete inherent? Well, because unalienable rights can't be given or taken away, but inherent ones can, because they are socially created. Jefferson knew that, and he knew that inherent rights might be extended to enslaved people and women, and he didn't want that. And in his notes on the state of Virginia, you can read them. Jefferson constructs an elaborate argument that people with black skin are inferior and therefore not fully human and therefore without unalienable rights, and that white people are a superior race, and so they're the only ones who are endowed with unalienable rights. Now, I don't present this as some little historical footnote, but to indicate that this argument that Attorney General Formella raises over the word inherent is something, it's been at the center of American life and history from the very beginning. Teachers need to discuss what this legacy meant and means today, and how this legacy endowed certain groups with rights and privileges and oppressed others. From the time of the founding of our nation, the limitations of freedom in the name of freedom was based on the belief of Jefferson and really the settled opinion of nearly all that people of African descent and Native Americans were inferior to white people, and perhaps even of a distinct species, and thus not included in that equal creation. Other arguments were made to justify the inferior status of women and their governance by property laws asserting the rights of white women. You know, in this very chamber, the General Court acted as a court on bills of divorce for many decades, and they had to do that because wives were considered a form of property of their husbands under the laws of coverture. Now, such beliefs were supported by the nation's founding documents, by Supreme Court rulings, state and federal laws, religious and social organizations, and surely and most fundamentally through education. Now, when I describe these matters in committee, the history, that settled habits on race, gender, and rights, promulgated in all of these ways I just enumerated, really an American culture built on settled habits, there was no disagreement voiced with this history. So one might ask, why has there been a struggle for rights and equality for women, for all gender identities, for so-called racial minorities, for children, if there wasn't settled habit that advantaged and oppressed certain groups in our society? And how could one discuss the current state of American society without the forbidden connection to the historical existence of ideas and subjects? And how to discuss how such settled habits persist without reference to bias held by certain groups consciously or unconsciously. Yet to do so may subject a New Hampshire teacher to lawsuit and disciplinary action. You know, I really think there's a way out of the problem that we've created with the word inherently and conscious and unconscious and you know, with the notion, the definition of discrimination that's being used here. I think there's a way out of that. And, you know, what we've run into is a real problem, that this kind of presumption that anybody who wants to discuss these matters about this is being discriminating, or that someone might be calling someone or be called racist or an oppressor or whatever. Let's get past these labels and finger pointing to conversation, to education, to understanding. It might be more useful for us to realize that we are a society, and this is what the sociologists talk about. We're a society that does race, And what that means is that historically we've been a society that sees through people through a lens of race. And it's so pervasive, settled habit, that it structures social and personal relations. There's really no question, after decades of study, experiments, surveys, investigation of hiring or housing practices, that this system is present and shapes all of us, whether we like it or not. And I think all of us don't like it, you know, and I agree, and we fight against it. Legislation just won't make this need for education and discussion about doing race go away. And preventing discussion and education about the past and its present will surely stymie our progress as citizens. You know, since I first introduced the bill, there's been ever more evidence of what the language has done since the passage of the budget. I've heard in meetings with SAU administrators, principals, and teachers a developing recruitment crisis for teachers in our state and about an exodus of teachers from New Hampshire schools. 55% of teachers are considering retiring early, leaving the profession, or moving to another state to teach. I've been told that there is currently not one African American public school social studies teacher in the state. And it's hard to imagine changing that any time soon, given the message that the state statute sends. This is at a time when the 2020 census reveals a rapidly diversifying population in our state. And I will say, sadly, when I taught at UNH, some of the happiest moments were when a student would say they wanted to become a teacher and ask me about the teaching program. And I would say that this is a great career for transforming the lives of young people, and it also is an opportunity to serve our democracy by educating the next generation of citizens. And I would say, please, please teach in New Hampshire. There are great schools and great colleagues here, and there's strong community support. Sadly, I don't think I could offer that advice today. It's time for us to remove this pall that has fallen over our New Hampshire schools. Thank you, Mr. President, or Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Waters. Senator Gannon has a question.
Senator Waters, if you'd take my question. So you've heard me in this room, in the committees, so I think it's really crystal clear. You can't advocate, you can't advance, you can't compel. But beyond that, in the freedom from discrimination section of HB 2 last year, there's a section that says, because you're saying that, there's this fear, but it says, nothing in this section shall be construed to prohibit discussing as part of a larger course of academic instruction the historical existence of ideas and subjects identified in this section. So I think it's really clear that it's saying you can teach anything you want, you can read any book you want, teach it, but don't preach a position. Teach, don't preach. Seems clear to me. Do you not see that in this bill?
Thanks for your question, and I wish I did, but
I can show you where it is.
I really
if you'd
advise
like.
you. No, I advise you. We know in this body that words are complicated, and this is why the Attorney General offered an opinion on how to interpret this statute. I recommend that you read that opinion. I quoted from it because he's the one who I think has muddied the waters here incredibly and kind of created a kind of self-cancellation between the two parts of the statute that you mentioned. And what we have unleashed here is that if someone decides that teaching a certain book, even having it read in a classroom, might be interpreted by a parent because the book is being taught as discriminatory because of what might, the novel or whatever it is. This is why teachers are saying that they're pulling books off the curriculum that they've taught for years and are taught all around the country.
Thank you, Senator.
So this is why, Senator, I recommend read that interpretation. One wishes the bills that we pass could be so simple, but in this case, it is not.
Thank you.
Is there a follow-up, Senator? Thank you. Okay, Senator Sherman with a question for?
Senator Waters.
Senator Waters? Okay.
Following up on what the senator from District 23 just asked, Senator Waters, is it not true that a teacher could teach following the interpretation that the senator from District 23 just gave, and in spite of trying to follow the letter of the law, a single parent could bring action against that teacher, and that teacher's career would be then potentially put at risk, even if they are following as closely as they can to the Attorney General's interpretation?
Well, thanks for your question. And, I taught for 44 years, and I agree absolutely that we don't advocate or indoctrinate in our classrooms. that the point is to provide information for open and free discussion. That's why we have public education, because it grows citizens by giving them that great tool to make up their own minds. What I fear here is that, and we also, let me say, we are largely speaking in an absence of knowledge about, American history and all the scholarship that's been done and what books are actually being taught, and we haven't read them, and so on and so forth. So, it's a little despairing to hear what is happening in our classrooms characterized in this way without any real evidence. But I think that what we've unleashed here is just a host of unintended consequences, potential lawsuits, and a real depression of what kind of good fact-based teaching we want to happen in our classrooms. We have an opportunity to change that. I also think, as I said before, we got ourselves in a language problem here, which is never simple. That we are afraid people are going to call somebody this or call somebody that, and that discrimination means this or discrimination means that. And gee, this is unproductive. It's not a way to have conversation. So I just really hope we could find a way forward. Thank you for your question.
Okay, the motion is inexpedient to legislate. Senator Whitley?
Thank you, Madam President. I also rise against the ITL motion on Senate Bill 298. I agree that we as a body have a real opportunity in this bill today to listen to our communities who have told us time and time again that the statute passed last year is not who we are as a state, that it is chilling important conversation and debate in our classrooms and prohibiting our students from practicing democracy. At a time when our politics, both nationally and here in New Hampshire, have never been more fractured and partisan, we have the opportunity to come together as a collegial body and ignore the toxic national rhetoric meant to divide us. We have the opportunity to show our children that we value honest and open discourse, and to show Granite Staters that we also value and recognize their real life experiences. Now, despite the senator from District 23's interpretation of the statute, the language is currently subject to litigation by several organizations and individuals because of its ambiguity. Now, in New Hampshire, we talk a lot about freedom. As a native Granite Stater, I know that freedom is foundational to our identity as a state, and it is a value that my fellow residents care deeply about. But as we heard from Professor John Graby, New Hampshire's preeminent constitutional expert, the ambiguous ban concept statute is antithetical to freedom, and that it is also subversive because, as he says, quote, it stealthily seeks to suppress lawful activity, end quote. And the lawful activity he was referring to is free speech. Banning certain topics of conversation or educational concepts rather than debating them on the merits is not who we are as a state. Policing speech is not who we are as a state. Advocates for banning certain concepts say that teachers are in schools not to teach, not advocate. But I would ask, how do we define advocate? Is introducing a topic in a debate advocacy? Is allowing a conversation to continue advocacy? Is assigning a book on a syllabus advocacy? We know that schools across the state are already removing books from their curriculum due to fear of violating this ambiguous law. That's where we are. This is a scary road, my friends, particularly as the mother of a school-aged child. I would argue that the very existence of this statute has already created far more division in our state. Policing speech will not unite us. What it will do is further contribute to division and slow our progress as a state. We heard testimony that this regressive statute has the potential to drive away businesses, drive away employees, drive away young people, and drive away a diverse population from New Hampshire. But what would bring us together, what would help prepare our students for a modern world, is to allow our educators to foster and guide open and honest debate and conversation. The existence of this statute shows our students and shows all onlookers on a national stage that we are unwilling to have difficult, brave, and yes, uncomfortable conversations. Is this the message we want to send? Despite the characterization of the banned concepts statute as anti-discrimination, what the legislation has actually done has been to muzzle and chill conversations, discussions about systemic racism, gender inequality, and other important aspects of our country. That's what our schools have told us. That's what our students have told us. That's what our municipalities have told us. I urge you to support this bill to show Granite Staters that this body actually values freedom, not political doublespeak. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator. The motion is an expedient to legislate. Senator Khan?
Thank you, Madam President. I rise today to speak against the ITL motion. Is teaching and training about our differences so divisive that we need laws to say that we need to treat everyone without regard to their differences? And do the anti-discrimination statutes make us a more inclusive body? Are we increasing our understanding of people who are different from us? The anti-discrimination statutes in chapters 354 and in 193, they are ambiguous and confusing as if by design. Consider the triple negative in 354A31. No public employer or government program shall teach that any person cannot attempt to treat others equally and without regard to differences. Does it mean we should teach without regard to age, sex, gender identity, sexual identity, race, color, marital status, mental or physical disability? The point is, we treat people differently all the time based on their race, sex, gender identity, religious affiliation, and the list goes on. If you're 18 years old, you can't vote. You can't attend movies, you can't rent a car. We know that there are pay gaps that exist by gender. We know that assault rates on transgendered students are much higher than the average. And assault rates on Asians are also much higher than the normal population. There are higher assault rates by law enforcement on people of color. And do we stop talking about these topics because they may suggest that systems exist that advantage some and disadvantage others? Do we avoid these very real issues because they create discomfort? Other differences that we acknowledge all the time. Students with disabilities who account for 15% of our school-age population. We assign them individual education plans, entirely appropriate because it's how we make sure that a student receives an adequate education in the way that best caters to each student's needs. Are we to stop teaching statistics because we can use statistics to show how income and educational outcomes and lifespan correlate to race? Do we stop using statistics because they can demonstrate that race influences education levels and access to financial assets? topics that were covered this past year by the Federal Reserve Bank in their series Racism and the Economy. Consider another section of statute now, 354A31. No employee shall be subject to any adverse employment action, warning, or discipline of any kind for refusing to participate in any training that compels participants to express belief in the divisive concepts. Well, consider the questions raised by the testimony from New Hampshire's leading human resources attorney representing the Society of Human Resource Managers. If I can view sexual harassment training as a divisive concept, can I then refuse to participate in sexual harassment training? Can I, in my workplace, teach about work style differences, age-related work style differences between boomers, Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z? And consider the questions coming from the New Hampshire Municipal Association. Can I teach about the different ways law enforcement is perceived by people of color or people whose primary language isn't English? And by the way, the New Hampshire Municipal Association hasn't received a single complaint about teaching discrimination or divisive concepts. So what is it that we're trying to fix? And what kind of disparity are we beginning to develop between the training that's taking place in the public sector organizations and training that's taking place in our private sector organizations? Consider now 19340, the prohibition on teaching discrimination. That's what the statute is titled. This section states, nothing in this section shall be construed to prohibit discussing the historic existence of ideas identified in this section. And despite the Attorney General's opinion, and yes, thank you, Senator Waters, I too have read it. And this question about it's unclear if an instructor crosses the line when historical context moves to the discussion of current events or lived experience. How does an educator interpret their ability to discuss current events, topics like murder of black men and violence against Asians, religious bias exhibited in other countries, and yes, even in our country, death rates from COVID-19, sexual exploitation of teens, and body shaming? Are these topics prohibited because they involve discussing unequal treatment? Consider the comments from New Hampshire's leading educators, Teachers of the Year, and their students. They came to testify. Teachers feel under the current law they can't allow students to dialogue with each other, peer review others' work, or let students lead classroom discussions because they don't know if it could lead to the discussion of a banned concept. Students testified they're not given the opportunity to share their own opinions, discuss current events, agree or disagree about social or historical issues, and develop analytical and critical thinking and debating skills. And a high school social studies teacher has disallowed students to pick their own topics for research papers because they're afraid the topics chosen by the students might lead to subjects in class that will violate the law. Folks, are we to teach to a world that doesn't exist, where everyone is treated equally, or to the one that does exist with all of its imperfections? Which of these approaches prepares our students for the world in which they will encounter people that are different from them? Where do we see ourselves in the experience of others? The emails supporting the current statute state the writers don't want critical race theory taught in schools. By the way, that is about 2,000 people who voiced their opinions, 3/4 who were in support of the repeal of the divisive concepts, anti-discrimination statutes. But of those, of that smaller population who said that they support the prohibitions on critical race theory taught in schools, that's what they wrote. And if that's what this is all about, then why cloak that fear in a statute that involves all other protected classes? Why not take this issue head on? There is little evidence that anyone in New Hampshire public schools teaches critical race theory. If there were objections to it, why not share it with school administrators and school boards and have them address that problem? Out of those 2,000 comments that we received, there was only one incident mentioned, and it was by a third party in an email about Senate Bill 304. And what I just described is just what happened. The real story was that teachers and staff reported to the superintendent that they felt uncomfortable with the way discrimination was being presented in a school organized workshop. The incident was reported to the superintendent, and from the superintendent to the school board, and the consultant's contract was terminated. Local control. They didn't need a state law to tell them. The last two presenters at the Judiciary Committee put a severe conclusion on the prohibition of teaching discrimination. We've already heard a couple of quotes from John Graby, constitutional law professor at UNH, called this a deceitful law, that restraints on speech are rooted in fear, that chill targets people, that it's too risky to exercise their rights. No one in this legislature should support legislation designed to chill lawful activity through vigilante lawsuits. He called this sham laws, such as to undermine political accountability and that invite cynicism about the integrity of the legislative process. Deceitful government conduct seeking to punish lawful activity is the very definition of tyranny. The goal of these provisions is to deter educators from engaging in difficult but essential and entirely lawful conversations about these topics. And if this legislature wants to suppress conversations about these topics, then we should do so explicitly and not hide behind a subterfuge. And then James McKinn, the language of the statutes is a textbook case of where intent does not equal impact. James McKinn, by the way, leads the NAACP in Manchester. For many people of color, he says, there is already a distrust of government and public officials and institutions. From the discussion he has had with parents who are people of color, the language of the statute increases that mistrust. With Senate Bill 304 and 298, we provide the opportunity that Governor Sununu and Republican legislators were looking for last year to vote down the prohibition on discussing racism, sexual abuse, and biases faced by New Hampshire residents without the threat of losing votes to pass a budget. The consequences of divisive concepts legislation, whether consciously or unconsciously, are having a chilling effect on teachers and public employers, interfering with the education of students and improvement of public services, and it represents another loss of local control. There was no evidence of critical race theory taught in schools either before or after this legislation. The point is, we don't need an ambiguous law that threatens teachers and public employees and drags New Hampshire through the press as a hyper-fearful state where bounties are placed on successful complaints against teachers leading to their dismissal. That won't fix our teacher shortage problems, and nor will it help the state address its workforce shortages. There are a lot of grounds, my friends, a lot of ground to be gained by repealing this anti-discrimination, divisive concept statutes and starting over with a dialogue about race, ways to address current issues of bias, and how to become more inclusive and accepting of differences in light of the overwhelming testimony that we've received on both of these bills, I ask my colleagues, both Republican and Democrat, to join together and undo the damage done by divisive concepts legislation. Vote down the inexpedient to legislate motions and let a vote of ought to pass on repealing the prohibitions on teaching and training on discrimination. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator. The motion is inexpedient to legislate. Senator D'Alessandro to speak.
Thank you, Madam President. Let's take a break and do one thing. Each one of you, look at the 5 portraits that are on the wall. Look at the 5 portraits that we look at every day when we come into this chamber. Could we ask Daniel Webster? Could we ask George Washington? Could we ask Abraham Lincoln? Could we ask Mr. Hale to adhere to this law that we put in place? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So think of this. These 5 portraits that we hold in such great esteem, that we look at every day, we're asking these men in their august body that appears before us, their souls, to look at this law and not repeal it. Could we tell Daniel Webster, you can't do this, as he was fighting cases? Could you tell Abraham Lincoln, who saved the Union, that he couldn't talk about slavery? Could you talk Hale, the key abolitionist of this country? Could we pull this kind of baloney with these great, great men? We put these portraits up for a reason. That reason is they did fundamentally wonderful things to enhance this democracy. This piece of legislation has done everything to counteract that activity. We're all human beings. We all have feelings. We have all been discriminated against one time in our lives. We've lived with it. Hopefully, we have learned from it, and we've learned not to do it to someone else. I've been a teacher all of my life. The greatest compliment I get in my life is, I want to be a teacher, Mr. D'Alessandro, like you were. If we can't have that kind of spirit, if we can't invoke that to the people we're working with, then we're all in deep trouble. The 5 men on the wall did something. We're tending to turn it upside down and negate it. Don't let that happen. Don't let that happen. Vote against inexpedient to legislate. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator. The motion is inexpedient to legislate. Is there any further discussion? Senator Bradley?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I think it's important to actually go back again to what the language of the statute says. And I'm going to quote from it. That one's age, sex, gender identity, sexual orientation, race, creed, color, marital status, family status, mental or physical disability, religion or national origin is inherently superior to people of another age, sex, gender identity, sexual orientation, race, creed, color, marital status, family status, mental or physical disability, religion, or national origin. And the same is repeated for not just inherently superior, but people are inherently racist, sexist, or oppressive. I said in this room last spring when we debated it that I thought the language was very clear, that it was going to be interpreted by people across the state exactly the way it was intended to be interpreted. And I think I answered a question from our colleague from District 24 and cited a further section of the statute that says, nothing in this section shall be construed to prohibit discussing, as part of a larger course of academic instruction, the historical evidence of ideas and subjects identified in this section. So we've heard the same arguments today as we heard last spring. We've heard there can be no honest engagement. We've heard the legislation is confusing, it's chilling, it's ambiguous. We've even heard it's vigilante law, that there are bounties, and that it's baloney. Okay, I get the idea that people want to create a narrative that they think fits the position that they want to take. But I hope that the people who have used some of those things that I just discussed, the honest engagement, confusion, chilling, ambiguous, etc., you ought to read today's Union Leader. You ought to read about the superintendent in Raymond, Mr. David DeRossi, who was quoted in this article because there had been a question raised by a couple of families about curriculum being taught. And he, and I'm quoting, said in the Union Leader, in response to dismissing those complaints, that what is part of Raymond's curriculum are episodes of history that deal with racism and oppression, the Civil War, the Civil Rights Movement, women's suffrage, for example. He went on to say, there are many areas that we teach that deal with oppression. DeRossi said, history and social studies classes will continue. That's right, they will continue to grapple with difficult issues and painful chapters of American history, including wars, the treatment of Native Americans, the women's suffrage movement, and the civil rights movement. Ladies and gentlemen, that's exactly what I said was going to happen. That we can and that we should fully debate, fully discuss those parts of our history, our current events that involve the subjects that we're debating. We should be debating all of these subjects: racism, civil rights, sexism, homophobia, and the list goes on. We should be educating ourselves, but what we should not be doing, and what the superintendent, I think, in Raymond clearly identifies, is saying that any one individual, by virtue of the characteristics that they're born with that I've enumerated, is inherently inferior or superior, or inherently racist or sexist. What is unclear about that? The good folks in Raymond got it right. They're going to continue to teach the things that should be taught, and the example they set should be a great example for schools around the state, for training of employees, etc. This statute is very clear. Don't confuse it, please, with words like chilling, ambiguous, vigilante law, bounties, and baloney. That's what the baloney is, So allow the continued discussion of everything that needs to be discussed in this state and in this country, but let's vote yes on the pending motion of inexpedient to legislate. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. The question is on the adoption of the committee recommendation of inexpedient to legislate on Senate Bill 298. Is there any further discussion? Senator Waters.
Thank you, Madam President. I appreciate the words of the senator from District 3. I do think that something profoundly has changed from the debate we had over the budget, and one of the reasons why it would have been awfully good had there actually been debate on a bill on this matter, because this could have been brought out, was the Attorney General's ruling. And I think that if the senator believes that we should take the words from their intent that were put in legislation, and that they're clear, that his argument is with the Attorney General and not with this body. I would add that no matter what the Raymond superintendent says, that under this language and the interpretation of the word inherently, any parent who is not satisfied with the Raymond superintendent's decision can now go to court. I'd also like to make it clear, once again, that in the Attorney General's opinion, that there is that bright line between what may be considered as a historical issue and discussing whether that history still has a conscious or unconscious effect on what is happening today. And what is so puzzling about that decision is that history actually is what happened a second ago, isn't it? And so this is not clear language. This is something that's going to be litigated. It is having a chilling effect. It was not clear. It is not clear now. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Whitley.
Thank you, Madam President. And I also find it necessary to elaborate on this ambiguity that my friend from District 3 raised. And I will note that following the passage of the banned concept statute, a diverse group of educators, advocacy groups, law firms, individuals filed a federal lawsuit challenging the banned concept statute because it discourages public school teachers from teaching and talking about race, gender, sexual orientation, disability, and gender identity in the classroom. So the New Hampshire lawsuit, again, filed in federal court, argues that HB 2's vague language unconstitutionally chills educators' voices under the 14th Amendment and prevents students from having an open and complete dialogue about the perspectives of historically marginalized communities. So don't take it from me, take it from this federal lawsuit. According to the lawsuit, the law is so unclear and so vague that it fails to provide necessary guidance to educators about what they can and cannot include in their courses. And it invites arbitrary and discriminatory enforcement up to and including the loss of teaching license. Now, I would agree that there have been significant advancements made in protecting the legal rights of people with disabilities, but they continue to confront discrimination, ableism, stigma, and bias on a daily basis. I would also agree that there have been significant advances in protecting the legal rights of women, but I can speak from personal experiences that we still continue to confront discrimination and bias on a daily basis. And I would also agree that we have made significant advances in protecting the legal rights of people of color in our state. But what we heard from communities of color time and time again, that they continue to confront discrimination in our state on a daily basis. So here again, we have the opportunity
to remove the stain of this statute from New Hampshire that is gaining national attention. Is this what we want to gain national attention? Is this what we want to fight out in federal court? Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. The question is on the adoption of the committee recommendation of inexpedient to legislate on Senate Bill 298. Are you ready for the question? Okay, a roll call has been requested by Senator Susie, seconded by Senator Bradley. Okay, the clerk will call the roll. Bradley.
Senator Hennessy.
Yes.
Senator Gaida.
Yes.
Senator Bradley.
Yes.
Senator Waters.
No.
Senator Prentice.
No.
Senator Gray.
Yes.
Senator French.
Yes.
Senator Ward.
Yes.
Senator Ricciardi.
Yes.
Senator Khan.
No.
Senator Daniels.
Yes.
Senator Abart's excused. Senator Rosenwald.
No.
Senator Whitley.
No.
Senator Kavanaugh.
No.
Senator Reagan.
Yes.
Senator Susie.
No.
Senator Birdsell.
Yes.
Senator D'Alessandro.
No.
Senator Perkins Quokka.
No.
Senator Morse. Senator Gannon.
Yes.
Senator Sherman.
No.
Senator Carson.
Yes.
13 to 10.
The ayes have it, 13 to 10. The motion of inexpedient to legislate is adopted.
Jack.
Senate will be attentive to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Committee on Judiciary, to which was referred Senate Bill 302 FN, an act establishing a Personal Privacy Protection Act. Having considered the same, the committee recommends that the bill is ought to pass with an amendment by a vote of 3 to 2. Senator Carson for the committee.
Senator Carson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 302 FN ought to pass with amendment. This bill prohibits public agencies and public bodies from releasing any list, record, register, registry, roll, roster, or other compilation of data of any kind that directly or indirectly identifies a person as a member, supporter, volunteer, or donor of any entity exempt from federal income tax under Section 501C of the Internal Revenue Code, except in specific circumstances. The bill also institutes penalties for the unlawful release of such information. Charitable giving is an essential part of the fabric of our state, and efforts around the country have begun to expose people's donations in an effort to increase unwanted solicitations or retaliations for individuals because they gave to a certain group. Individuals have a right to donate anonymously, even if it is simply out of the desire to keep the focus on the charity and off themselves. The committee did amend the bill to address concerns raised by stakeholders at the hearing by moving the language out of RSA 91A, clarifying the judicial process, and ensuring that the charitable trusts unit is still able to work appropriately with the entities. It is vital we do not create a chilling effect on charitable giving in the state, and therefore the majority of the Judiciary Committee asks for your support in the motion of ought to pass with amendment on Senate Bill 302 FN. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Carson. The motion is ought to pass with amendment. The bill is now on second reading. The first order of business is the committee amendment. Is there any discussion on the committee amendment? The question is on the adoption of the committee amendment. Are you ready for the question? All in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it. The committee amendment is adopted. The bill is on second reading. Is there any further discussion or amendments? Senator Whitley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise against the committee motion of ought to pass as amended. First of all, I think this bill is not ready for prime time because it has not adequately addressed significant concerns raised by the New Hampshire Attorney General's Office and the New Hampshire Center for Nonprofits, who continue to oppose this bill. Furthermore, this bill is also unnecessary because there is already a Supreme Court case on this issue and a body of jurisprudence that is the law of the land. This bill will create more litigation, add another layer of secrecy, and erode transparency. And we also heard that it will politicize our nonprofits. And for those reasons, I urge my colleagues to oppose the ought to pass as amended motion for those reasons. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Whitley. The question is on the adoption of ought to pass as amended on Senate Bill 302. Senator Susie.
Question for the senator from District 15.
Senator, will you take the question?
Senator, I heard mention that this issue really deals with charitable contributions, and I wondered why all 501c were included and it wasn't narrowed to C3s or C4s. Was that ever taken up during the committee discussion?
I don't believe so.
Further question, Mr.
Further
President?
question.
Just one additional question. I'm looking at the amendment on page 13, which is in Roman 5, and the last part is very curious to me. It says that any party who intends to display or produce a record that's subject to this sanction in a courtroom during a hearing or trial shall notify the court to allow the courtroom to be cleared prior to discussion or display of the record. I don't know about you, Senator, but I find that language very curious. The only time I've seen courtrooms cleared is in criminal trials regarding victims. Are you aware of any other instance where we do this for the display of a financial record?
I'm not aware of any other incidents, and I think that discussion is part of the reason why there were significant concerns about this bill politicizing, highly politicizing our nonprofits.
Thank you.
Senator Carson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator, I'm going to try to answer your question about why a courtroom would be cleared. I would like to remind all of you that one of the latest constitutional amendments that have been passed by the legislature has been the preservation of personal privacy. We live in an age now where just about everything about us is out there. Those of us who to participate in the political arena, we're used to that. We have to be open, we have to be transparent, we have to have declarations. We've got our own financial filings that are out there for anybody to look at, and that is a good thing. But you're talking about private citizens, and the idea that they are going to donate their money to a particular organization or a particular cause. And we are seeing right now in Canada, of all places, with this trucker demonstration, where the government is calling for, let's target these people. We want to find out who they are and target them. And it was also brought to my attention that many of these people who have donated to this particular cause are being doxxed as well. We don't want that happening here. For me personally, it doesn't matter who you give money to. It's your money, it's your right, it's your freedom. But you shouldn't be subjected to people protesting out in front of your house or doxing your information or any kind of retaliation because another individual or a group of individuals don't like that you support a particular cause. So, Mr. President, building upon our own constitutional amendment of preserving someone's privacy, it makes complete sense that if someone brings in a list into a courtroom, that the court do everything it possibly can to protect individual privacy, much like you do when you're dealing with matters concerning children in court. Many times, those matters are not open to the public. So here we're talking about protecting an individual's privacy. And I think in today's age, That is extremely important, and I think our society should start taking this a lot more seriously. I understand it's difficult in the age of social media, but all it takes is the push of one button, and you could really hurt someone. Really hurt someone. And to the donors who love to give money anonymously, is it our business? Should their information be out there? That so-and-so gave so much money to this particular charity? Many people enjoy donating anonymously, and they don't want their information breached, because once people see that you've given a large amount of money to another organization, then all of a sudden they're all lining up. They want to talk to you. They want you to give you your money as well. So let's build upon our constitutional amendment, preserving an individual's privacy as we deal with this subject. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Carson. The question is on the adoption of ought to pass as amended on Senate Bill 302. Further discussion? You ready for the question? Roll call has been requested by Senator Bradley, seconded by Senator Gaida. The clerk will call the roll.
Senator Hennessy.
Yes.
Senator Gaida.
Yes.
Senator Bradley.
Yes.
Senator Waters.
No.
Senator Prentice.
No.
Senator Gray.
Yes.
Senator French.
Yes.
Senator Ward.
Yes.
Senator Ricciardi.
Yes.
Senator Khan.
Yes.
Senator Daniels.
Yes.
Senator Avards excused. Senator Rosenwald.
No.
Senator Carson.
Yes.
Senator Whitley.
No.
Senator Kavanaugh.
No.
Senator Reagan.
Yes.
Senator Susi.
No.
Senator Birdsell.
Yes.
Senator D'Alessandro.
No.
Senator Perkins Coca.
No.
Senator Gannon.
Yes.
Senator Sherman.
No.
And Senator Morse.
Yes.
14-9.
The ayes have it, 14-9. The motion about to pass as amended is adopted and it's ordered to third reading. Senate will be attentive to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Committee on Judiciary, to which was referred Senate Bill 304, an act relative to discrimination in public workplaces and education. Having considered the same, the committee recommends that the bill is inexpedient to legislate by a vote of 3-2. Senator Gannon for the committee.
Senator Gannon.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Bill 304 inexpedient to legislate. This bill would have removed provisions concerning freedom from discrimination in public workplaces and education and clarified the authority of public schools and public employers concerning discrimination. The issue at hand here is not teaching, but advocacy. Remember my 3 words earlier? I'm going to say them again. Teach, don't preach. Everyone in the body undoubtedly supports our amazing New Hampshire teachers, the incredible work that they do every day. However, as the legislature, we have a duty to ensure that the students are being treated appropriately and that they are being taught and not indoctrinated. The language of our current statute states, nothing in this section shall be construed to prohibit discussing, as part of a larger course of academic instruction, the historical existence of ideas and subjects identified in this section. It is clear that the only thing the current statute prohibits is an educator advocating for a position rather than teaching the facts. Just remember this, again, teach, don't preach. Therefore, the majority of the judiciary asks for your support in the motion of inexpedient to legislate on Senate Bill 304. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Gannon. The motion is inexpedient to legislate. Is there any discussion? Senator Khan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Historic context is made clear. What one's opinion is about current events and how they have an origin in historical context, that's completely unclear. And if you find that in the Attorney General's opinion, please call it to my attention. But it's not there. So there's the ambiguity, Senator, in your thought about teach and don't preach. As soon as I get on to express that I continue to confront racism, anti-Semitism, other biases, I'm beginning to influence, aren't I? If I'm a teacher and I express that, maybe I'm continuing to advocate, or am I teaching? And that was part of the testimony. You heard it, we all heard it. There is no bright line between advocacy and teaching. Teaching is to understand different perspectives and to try to help people form independent opinions. But you don't get to that outcome without expressing thoughts that are that may be different. Where I wanted to start this was that when I was in high school, I had to read Newsweek. It was an assignment. Could have gone to the library, had a home subscription, whatever. And then weekly, we took a quiz on current events. And I still try to read a weekly magazine, so I picked up Time magazine this last week. Page 26 I commend to you. And the View essay was by Savala Nolan. Now, looking up Savala Nolan, she is a University of California, Berkeley Law School professor who teaches on race, class, and gender. And Miss Nolan, interestingly, has ancestry that is black, white, and Mexican. She states in the article that, quote, "I think of whiteness primarily as a collection of habits and behaviors premised on the assumption that dealing with race is optional." Oops. I think we need to ban Time magazine from New Hampshire public schools. New Hampshire's prohibition on teaching discrimination was also the subject of CBS Sunday Morning News this last week on freedom of speech. Fortunately, Mr. President, nobody in this chamber was interviewed for the story. The story did feature an interview with Jennifer Given, a New Hampshire social studies teacher in Senator Avard's district at Hollis Brookline High School. And Miss Given was eloquent as she addressed the pressure she and other teachers are confronting to conform to a sanitized script when addressing history in the classroom. So without going into all the debate that we've had so far on 298 and 304, to make explicit what 304 does beyond what was asked for as a repeal in 298, 304 asks for the repeal and also asks that the Senate set a principle that no public employee or teacher is barred from or shall be subject to civil liability for engaging in any form of instruction or training concerning the historical or current experiences of any group that is protected from discrimination. I guess I'd ask my colleague from Senate District 3, do you think that that might improve our current statute? That's what's being proposed here. We could find to lift that into something else, but that's what's being proposed. Take some of the burden off of the guesswork that public employees and teachers are facing right now. Lift the warrantless shackles that they face. The prohibition on teaching discrimination is truly about divisive concepts, but maybe not in the way that those who introduced it believe. It seems it's that those who are asking for dialogue on race are growing further apart from those who don't want to engage in the discussion. We're all going to take a break, well-deserved in this next week. One of the things I'm going to go do is I'm going to go to New York City. I'm going to go see John Legend performing Harry Belafonte music in a New York City music hall. So I asked last night Alexa to play some Harry Belafonte music. So little did I know that this music icon of Caribbean black ancestry was married to his second wife for 47 years, who was of Jewish ancestry. So he begins to sing a song that's derived from Psalm 133, in which he sings in Hebrew, Hine ma tovu manayim shevet ahim gam yahad. How very good and pleasant it is when kindred live together in unity. It's a round, it goes with a choral group, and it continues for 5 minutes. And today, given our global tensions, that message of living in global unity has a lot of meaning. But today, let's take a step today that forges greater unity in our state as well. Let's vote down this ITL motion. Let's pass Senate Bill 304 over to the House for their consideration. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I'd like to thank my colleague from District 10 for singing for us this afternoon. You have a beautiful singing voice. You had mentioned that you wanted someone to show you where some of these things are articulated, and you had mentioned previously that you had read the notice from the response from the Attorney General, and I'd just like to bring to your attention points 3 and 4 and the interpretation. And the question was, does the law prohibit teachers from teaching U.S. history? And the answer is no. Nothing prohibits the teaching of historical subjects, including, but not limited to, slavery, the treatment of Native American population, Jim Crow laws, segregation, treatment of women, treatment of the LGBTQ+ community, treatment of people with disabilities, treatment of people based on their religion, or the civil rights movement. Nor does anything prohibit discussions related to current events, including, but not limited to, the Black Lives Matter movement, efforts to promote equity and inclusion, or other contemporary events that impact certain identified groups. Point 4 asks, are schools allowed to teach students historical concepts related to discrimination? The answer is yes. Schools are allowed to discuss, as part of a larger course of academic instruction, the historical existence of ideas and subjected identified in the new law. Nothing prohibits schools from teaching about discrimination, including the historical existence of those ideas. But there was a point I would like to make that came out of the Union Leader article this morning from I think it's DeRossi, in his response to the charges that were levied in the town of Raymond. And the last sentence that I have here, he said, he and school principals are happy to look at any parent's concerns, whether the issue is curriculum, discipline, or even school lunch. He said, and it is key that teachers keep their personal opinions out of the classroom. And I think that that is what my colleague, Senator Gannon, keeps talking about. There's no issue in teaching the subject. What are the historical facts? What's the background to this? And you can have great discussions, but it's when personal opinions are interjected into that discussion that there's problems, because students oftentimes, my goodness, am I responsible for this? Is this what I have to give back to the teacher in order to get a good grade? And you don't want to see something like that. I think everyone here knows I teach at the community college in Nashua, and I make sure that I make it a point that when I give my personal opinion, I tell them, this is my personal opinion. They don't have to agree with me, and I make that very clear. that they have their own opinions, and let's talk, let's have a discussion about that. But I separate my personal opinion out of the discussion, so they know that's just the way that I think. And I find that it works, and we do have really good discussions. But it's, again, it's at the college level, not at the high school level, where you're dealing with students that are much younger. So I do believe that this language that we passed, that we had great discussions about last year in the spring, I think it's very clear and it is concise. And like my good friend from District 15 has said, this is being litigated. There are groups and individuals who disagree with the law, and they have sued. So we're going to have to wait and see what works out. And I can understand that sometimes people might be a little uncomfortable, but I do believe the Attorney General's directive has provided a very clear pathway as to what the issue is and what the issues are not. And I think it's a good basis for having good educational discussions, especially about current events. All we have to look at is today, and my goodness. I mean, I just got a text from my daughter. They just took the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. And what does that mean for us? And I think we can have these types of great discussions, and I can imagine having that kind of a discussion in a classroom today. I just don't see this as chilling. I just don't see this as a big problem. What I saw was a problem were the instances that we were made aware of teachers acting inappropriately in the classroom, putting up pictures of the former president and pretending they had a gun and they were shooting him. Is that appropriate? I don't think that is. I think that was a personal opinion. You are entitled to your personal opinion. But let me ask you, how many people feel that they can give their personal opinions about any particular subject in the workplace? Most adults don't do that because there's usually some sort of ramification. Someone's going to be offended. Someone's going to report them. So they watch their speech. They don't want to lose their jobs. And people have. People have lost their jobs for inappropriate tweets that someone else has interpreted a particular way. It happens. Is it right? I don't think so. But in this instance, when we trust our children to our teachers, we want to make sure our children are being educated. We want them to know about these things. It's important that they know these things happen. As most of you know, I'm a historian, and we have seen so many changes in the historical fields of study that have included people that have been marginalized for decades. And it has enriched our country and given us a better understanding of our country, how it operates, and how we are as a people. We are not bad. I shudder when students come to me and tell me, well, I was taught that we're bad. We did all these terrible things. Okay, but has it been put into context for you? And it's great that we have these conversations because at the end they go, well, why didn't they tell us this? I can't answer that question for them. All I can do is point to the scholarship out there so they can read for themselves and determine for themselves what they think is right and wrong. But unfortunately, a lot of public school students aren't given that opportunity. I'm sorry, Mr. President. I know I'm going on a little bit, probably beyond the subject, and I apologize to the body. But it is something that I feel very passionate about. This is the generations that are going to be following us. And what are we teaching them? I don't think that what we've passed is bad. It's just keeping your personal opinion out of the classroom. It doesn't belong there. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Carson. The motion is inexpedient to legislate. Is there any further discussion? The question is on the adoption of the committee recommendation of inexpedient to legislate on Senate Bill 304. You ready for the question? All in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it. The motion of inexpedient to legislate is adopted. The Senate is attentive to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Committee on Judiciary, to which was referred Senate Bill 322, an act relative to remote meetings under the Right to Know law. Having considered the same, the committee recommends that the bill is re-referred to interim study by a vote of 3-2. Senator French for the committee.
Senator French.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to table.
The motion is to table. All in favor say aye. All opposed say no. You've tabled Senate Bill 322. Senate will be attentive to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Committee on Judiciary, to which was referred Senate Bill 375 FN, an act relative to requirements for charitable organizations. Having considered the same, the committee recommends that the bill is ought to pass with an amendment by a vote of 4-1. Senator Gannon for the committee.
Senator Gannon.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 375 FN ought to pass with amendment. This bill prohibits New Hampshire state agencies and officials from imposing filing or reporting requirements that are more stringent than those established in RSA 719 through RSA 732-1 or other areas of statutory or common law. The bill also increases the amount of revenue, gains, and other support required for charitable organizations for the filing of additional audited statements to the Attorney General from $1 million to $2 million. Charities are already asked to provide significant information to the federal and state government, which would place a significant burden on what their efforts should be focused on, charitable efforts. To prevent any overreach, this bill would prohibit a state agency or government officer from imposing onerous filing fees or ones that are more stringent than state or federal law. It would have a chilling effect on charity giving. Due to concerns brought forward by the Charitable Trust Unit, the amendment includes language stating that this shall not be construed to limit or restrict the powers, duties, remedies, or penalties available to the AG, the state of New Hampshire, or any private person under any provision or statutory or common law. This will allow the Charitable Trust Unit to continue to engage in their collaborative work with New Hampshire charities to ensure they are in compliance. Therefore, the majority of the Judiciary Committee asks for your support in the motion of ought to pass with amendment on Senate Bill 375 FN. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Gannon. The motion is ought to pass with amendment. The bill is now on second reading. The first order of business is the committee amendment. Is there any discussion on the committee amendment? The question is the adoption of the committee amendment. You ready for the question? All in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it. The committee amendment is adopted. The bill is on second reading. Is there any further discussion or amendments? The question is the adoption of ought to pass as amended on Senate Bill 375. You ready for the question? All in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it. The motion of ought to pass as amended is adopted and it's ordered to third reading. The Senate will be attentive to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Committee on Judiciary, to which was referred Senate Bill 377 FN, an act relative to the diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder in state troopers. Having considered the same, the committee recommends that the bill is ought to pass with an amendment by a vote of 4-1. Senator Carson for the committee.
Senator Carson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 377 FN ought to pass with amendment. As amended, this bill creates a prima facie presumption that an injury is occupationally caused if it occurs while the state trooper is operating a state police vehicle in the performance of the trooper's official duties. The language of this bill deals with a current gap in the law regarding workers' compensation for our troopers on the road. Due to changes in contracts, command staff are not recognized as being paid until they arrive at headquarters, even though they may be in uniform in fully marked cars and may have to answer calls on their drive-in. In a similar vein, when troopers do extra duty details, like working a construction job on the highway, or they do a Hampton Beach extra patrol detail, those troopers do not get paid for the commute to the site. A concern has been raised that during commute time, if an officer is injured in an accident or by some other manner, because they are not viewed under the law as on duty at the time, then that injury may not be covered by workers' comp. This bill addresses that by creating a presumption that if a trooper is operating a cruiser and in their uniform on the way to a state function, they will be covered under workmen's compensation. Therefore, in order to properly cover our troopers, the majority of the Judiciary Committee asks for your support in the motion of ought to pass with amendment on Senate Bill 377 FN. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Carson. The motion is ought to pass with amendment. The bill is on second reading. The first order of business is the committee amendment. Is there any discussion on the committee amendment? The question is on the adoption of the committee amendment. You ready for the question? All in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it. The committee amendment is adopted. The bill is on second reading. Is there any further discussion or amendments? The question is on the adoption of ought to pass as amended on Senate Bill 377. You ready for the question? All in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it. The motion of ought to pass as amended is adopted and it's ordered to third reading. Senate will be attentive to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Committee on Judiciary, to which was referred Senate Bill 392, an act relative to the statutory definition of insane or insane person. Having considered the same, the committee recommends that the bill is ought to pass with an amendment by a vote of 4-1. Senator Whitley for the committee.
Senator Whitley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 392 ought to pass with amendment. This bill establishes a commission to study the definition of insanity in our statutes and the concept of restoration of competency. The state statute on insanity has not been amended since 1918, and it currently reads, quote, "The words insane or insane person shall include every idiot, non-compos, lunatic, insane, or distracted person." It is evident that this language is not in line with the current research or understanding of mental health, and there is a need to amend the statute. However, this is a complex issue which impacts the healthcare industry, the judicial system, and more throughout the state. Therefore, there is a need to study this to determine the most appropriate language before moving forward. This commission will also look at restoration of competency rates in New Hampshire, as we have consistently had a rate of 40%, while most other states have a rate around 80%. We are also one of the few states without a formal restoration process, and it is important to review whether one is needed. In order to study these important issues, the majority of the Judiciary Committee asks for your support in the motion of ought to pass with amendment on Senate Bill 392. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Whitley. The motion is ought to pass with amendment. The bill is now on second reading. The first order of business is the committee amendment. Is there any discussion on the committee amendment? Senator Gannon.
I'm probably the only one here. I saw bail reform coming early, and I saw the problems that were going to come with it. I know it was well-intentioned, and I know this bill is probably well-intentioned, and it's probably just me being paranoid, and I mentioned seeing a Trojan horse in the committee, and Brad Pitt in the movie Troy, you know, my twin, he didn't want the Trojan horse let in. And I just have a feeling, because I look at the purpose statement in this bill, and best practices for inpatient and outpatient insanity-acquitted individuals. Insanity-acquitted individuals, again, improvement in elements. The next two lines down, develop a plan for comprehensive restoration programs for individuals deemed not competent but restorable. I understand the intent of the bill is probably admirable. I'm fearful we're going to be letting out individuals who we've restored, who are very dangerous, and I step back and I look, is there something more going on? And I just am uncomfortable that, and again, you and Senator from District 3 have made me well aware of mental health issues. We're doing everything we can in Hampstead Hospital, and you've really raised my bar as what we should do for mental health in the state. But I just see something coming down the road that wasn't intended here, letting people out when they've been rehabilitated early. So I won't be voting for it, and I don't mind if I'm alone with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Gannon. Senator Sherman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to be a little reassuring on that point, this bill, as originally filed, actually started to raise some concerns with the Attorney General's office and others, because the current definition is being used in active trials, and that's why the commission came out. When we started talking about doing the commission on the definition of insanity, Commissioner Hanks actually approached me. I serve on the Governor's Advisory Council on Mental Health in the Correction System. She is the chair. And last fall, we had an extensive discussion as well as a presentation regarding restoration of competency. If a defendant is found incompetent to stand trial, there is a process of restoration, which, as Senator Whitley said, we don't have that in New Hampshire. This is a process of treatment and intervention to restore competency so that the defendant can actually go to trial for their alleged crime. It's in the best interest not only of the defendant, because then they have due process, but also the victim and the state to do this. And that's why so many states have done it and made it a priority. Has zero to do with bail reform. And if you can't restore competency, there's actually a higher risk that a guilty person would be released because you don't have a restoration process in place. So this is what allows due process to move forward. So the Governor's Advisory Council asked me to put this in the amendment, and the amendment was written by the Attorney General, the Department of Corrections, and the Department of Health and Human Services. I think I understand the concern, but actually I believe from listening to them that this protects the citizens from dangerous criminals more so than we can right now with our current lack of a process. So I hope that helps a little bit.
Thank you, Senator Sherman. The question is on the adoption of the committee amendment. Are you ready for the question? All in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it. The committee amendment is adopted. The bill is on second reading. Is there any further discussion or amendments? Question is on the adoption of ought to pass as amended on Senate Bill 392. You ready for the question? All in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it. The motion of ought to pass as amended is adopted, and it's ordered to third reading. We are now at the conclusion of the regular calendar, and we'll take up, I believe, the one bill that came off of consent. Well, two bills came off consent. One got special ordered. The Senate will be attentive to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Committee on Election Law and Municipal Affairs, to which was referred Senate Bill 247, an act relative to broadband infrastructure bonds. Having considered the same, the committee recommends that bill be re-referred to interim study by a vote of 5-0. Senator Susi for the committee.
Senator Susi.
Thank you, Mr. President. Current state law allows municipal bonding to construct broadband networks to serve areas where the private sector hasn't invested in modern networks. This law has worked and properly balances the state's desire to encourage private investment and innovation with the recognition that the public sector has a role to play when the private sector can't make such investments. Senate Bill 247 would actually overturn the policy to allow municipal bonding to construct and operate broadband networks anywhere, even where multiple providers are already competing. The current law has been on the books for several years, and in 2021, the legislature passed Senate Bill 88, which improved the information sharing and made the process more efficient. This legislation was supported at the time by both municipalities and providers. The committee heard testimony that broadband networks require constant capital investments and that municipalities in neighboring Massachusetts, such as Braintree and Russell, have recently had to sell their networks because they couldn't continue to make the needed investments required to compete. The committee heard concerns that committing taxpayers to 20 years of debt payments to compete in a highly competitive industry where new technologies like 5G wireless and satellite broadband are emerging was very risky. Further, the committee understands that New Hampshire municipalities rely on access to capital to fund important government services and do not want to see New Hampshire experience a repeat of Burlington, Vermont's credit downgrading as a result of its failed effort to bring its own network online. Lastly, the committee recognizes the importance of focusing on those parts of New Hampshire that currently lack any access to modern broadband networks and was concerned that Senate Bill 247 would discourage the current private-public partnerships that are critical to bridging the digital divide. For these reasons and many more, the committee asks for your support for the motion of interim study. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Susi. The motion is referred to interim study. Is there any further discussion? Senator Rishardi.
I rise in opposition to the committee's interim study. The pandemic severely highlighted the need for broadband expansion in our state. It also highlighted the need for improved download and upload speeds in some of our existing infrastructure. SB 247 allows municipalities whose residents are underserved or unserved to bond and take these projects on themselves because the private sector has refused to do so. I need to make it clear that this bill merely enables all communities to issue bonds for the purpose of improving the availability of high-speed broadband infrastructure. It does not, nor was it intended to, disrupt any effort being made to extend broadband to those residents who currently are not served by high-speed internet. Any funds raised under a community bonding would be dedicated to improving service in that community and would be subject to the requirement that the community vote to utilize the bonding. This bill was of great request by many of my constituents, and I am here to help them. And for these reasons, I'm asking you to overturn the committee's recommendation for the interim study. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Rishardi. The question is on the adoption of the committee recommendation of referred interim study on Senate Bill 247. Are you ready for the question? All in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it. The motion to refer to interim study is adopted. I recognize Senator Bradley for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate adjourn from the early session, that the business of the late session be in order at the present time, that all bills and resolutions ordered to third reading be by this resolution read a third time, all titles be the same as adopted, and that they be passed at the present time.
All in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it. The early session is adjourned. We are now in the late session. Are there any announcements to come before the Senate? Senator Reagan? Oh, Senator Bradley.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a reminder to members of the Rules Committee, we will meet probably for less than 1 minute downstairs right after we're done here in room 100. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Bradley. Any further announcements? The Senate will be going back to the Senate chambers on March 17th. So the 10th you have off. I'm sure there's committees that want to schedule that time period, though. So we currently only have what you special ordered today to the 17th. So beyond that, we need to get, I believe, 70-some bills out of committee. Am I right? Somewhere in that number. So we have a lot of work to do, but on the 17th, we'll be meeting in the Senate chambers. 78 bills still in committee. I recognize Senator Bradley for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the business of the day being completed, that the Senate recess to the call of the chair for the purposes of introducing legislation referring bills to committee, scheduling hearings, sending and receiving messages, vacating bills, and processing enrolled bill reports and amendments. And when we recess to the call of the chair.
All in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it. The Senate is in recess to the call of the chair. Enjoy